Chapter 2701. Hearing Du Xiaofu's question, the eyes of the 7 or 8 young experts beside him couldn't help but reveal a fiery light. They all stared at Dai Xuanzi, waiting for his answer. Seeing this scene, He Zhibai couldn't help but smile bitterly. He shook his head as if he was sighing about something. Others didn't know Dai Xuanzi's background, but he knew very well that it wouldn't be easy to obtain benefits from that guy. Depending on the situation, if you can help me break open the fearsome ground and obtain the treasures inside, what's the harm in giving you a high-grade divine weapon? Dai Xuanzi said, raising his chin slightly with a hint of arrogance. His words immediately caused many people's expressions to change drastically, and they all cried out in surprise. A divine weapon, a high-grade divine weapon, this is unbelievable. A high-grade divine weapon, if I obtain it, my strength will increase by at least 40 to 50%. As expected of someone from the Great Void Divine General's estate, he's really generous. Hearing everyone's words, Du Xiaofu fell into deep thought. He was still not too clear on what kind of concept a god artifact was, but from the reactions of those people, he could tell that the high-grade god artifact that Dai Xuanzi spoke of was definitely extraordinary. He just did not know if it could compare to his own heavenly palace of violet gold, and whether it was stronger or weaker. He was silent for a moment, then said again, I'm afraid this isn't right. If we go down, it's already a matter of 9 deaths. If we die and don't even get to touch the divine weapon, wouldn't that be a great loss? How about this? You give us the reward first, and we'll go down to investigate. Du Xiaofu pretended to be a hothead and said seriously. However, his words made Dai Xuanzi's face darken immediately. He Zhibai was also stunned, and he began to seriously size up Du Xiaofu. This unfamiliar face actually dared to bargain with Dai Xuanzi? How could he not be surprised? He did not believe that Du Xiaofu was really a hothead. He was definitely pretending to be a fool. However, he did not know where Du Xiaofu came from. He even dared to provoke someone from the Great Void General's residence. Kid, are you trying to bargain with me? Dai Xuanzi's face darkened as he glared at Du Xiaofu. His tone involuntarily became stern. As Du Xiaofu had concealed his aura, Dai Xuanzi was unable to see through his cultivation. Since we're making a deal, we have to be fair. You can't expect us to go down and die just because of a promise. How can there be such an easy thing in the world? Du Xiaofu spread out his hands and remained motionless. Brat, you have guts. Do you know who you are talking to? This time, before Dai Xuanzi could say anything, one of his followers stepped forward and pointed at Du Xiaofu as he reprimanded him. At the same time, a bright light burst out from the follower's body, and a tyrannical aura surged toward Du Xiaofu. Qi! Du Xiaofu circulated the energy in his body and repelled the opponent's aura. However, his body swayed and he took half a step back. The strength of the person who had attacked was merely at the late stage of origin return realm. In other words, it was equivalent to the sage accomplished realm. So, it shouldn't have resulted in such a result. However, Du Xiaofu didn't want to reveal his strength too early. Therefore, he pretended to be at a disadvantage. You're not weak, but you shouldn't have been so presumptuous in front of me. Now you have 2 choices. One is to go down and investigate for us. After you obtain useful information, I'll spare your life. 2, I'll take your life now and let you pay the price for your mistake. Dai Xuanzi stared at Du Xiaofu, and his tone was filled with killing intent. At this time, he could see that Du Xiaofu was not a hothead at all. He was just pretending to be stupid and making fun of him. Those who could enter the chaos space were not weak. The purple-robed young man in front of him was not weak either. He was able to resist the aura of an expert at the advanced stage of the void returning realm. It was enough to show that he was extraordinary. However, he was still too weak compared to Dai Xuanzi. Dai Xuanzi's heart inexplicably burst with killing intent. Since young, not many people dared to question his words in such a tone. You want to take someone's life at every turn. Those who don't know would think that this is your home. Du Xiaofu was also a little angry. He curled his lips and sneered, I came from another world and have never heard of the Great Void Divine General's residence. I don't know how powerful it is, so don't use it to pressure me. I won't fall for it. My life is right here, but I don't know if you have the ability to take it away. Kid, how dare you look down on the great void divine general's residence? You're courting death. The anger in Dai Xuanzi's heart rose with a bang, and his eyes were incomparably cold. He let out a muffled roar. With a flip of his wrist, a completely black longsword appeared in his hand. The moment the longsword appeared, it instantly poured out a misty fog, which spread out like water waves. The longsword let out a wung-wung sound, and the surrounding void was affected by it, forming circles of ripples. Then, Dai Xuanzi's wrist gently shook, and the ripples became even more intense. The space directly distorted and deformed like a fried dough twist. Without any hesitation, he swung his sword and slashed out, violently attacking Du Xiaofu. A huge sword light was like a water curtain, with dazzling runes jumping. With a destructive aura, it swept towards Du Xiaofu. What an unlucky year. Not long after I left home, I was chased by an old dog for a long time. Now, an arrogant second-generation heir has appeared to provoke me. Do I have a face that's easy to bully? Do any Tom, Dick, or Harry have to bare their fangs and brandish their claws in front of me? Du Xiaofu's heart was filled with endless emotions, and there was also an indescribable sense of depression. However, he had never been a person who was afraid of trouble. Since the other party had come to provoke him, how could he have the nerve to come to the 33 heavens if he didn't leave a memento? At the same time, Du Xiaofu summoned the purple-gold heavenly tower into his hand. The broadsword's body glowed with a dazzling purple-gold light, like a purple sun shining brightly, dazzling everyone's eyes. Wave after wave of vast aura surged out, like a rushing river, like a monstrous wave, spreading out in the void. Wung, a violent wave of majesty instantly descended, filling the surrounding endless void. At the same time, the roars of dragons and tigers, as well as the cries of birds and turtles, erupted from the purple-gold heavenly tower. Hegemonic sword path. Du Xiaofu let out a low roar, and with a slash of his sword, the surrounding mountains all trembled. Everywhere the vast sword light passed, the void was like a piece of cloth, and a terrifying gap was drawn out, appearing ferocious. The sword light collided with Dai Xuanzi's sword light in an instant. Crackle! The space was torn apart piece by piece, and huge cracks spread out like a spider web. Broken runes danced in the sky, sweeping in all directions. The vegetation in the valley was completely wiped out, and the area of dozens of miles around the two of them turned into a yellow sand zone. He Jibai and the dozens of people who were nearby all retreated. In this energy storm that filled the sky, Du Xiaofu did not seem to be affected at all. His figure crossed it and charged straight at Dai Xuanzi. So you were hiding your strength. Dai Xuanzi's figure retreated explosively, and only after flying out of the center of the energy storm did he fly out. Previously, Du Xiaofu was pushed back half a step by his subordinate's aura attack, but when he fought with him, the result was like this. Although the battle between the two of them did not create a huge array, Dai Xuanzi did not dare to rashly pass through the energy storm, but the purple-robed young man opposite him dared to. Obviously, he had not used his full strength yet. This made Dai Xuanzi's heart fill with shock. Needless to say, the opponent's strength was definitely not weaker than his, and might even be stronger. This unknown kid's strength was actually so profound. Kid, no matter where you come from, you're going to die today. Dai Xuanzi's eyes were wide open, and his face was ferocious. He stared at Du Xiaofu like a cheetah, ready to pounce at any time. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind in a moment. With the strength of this kid in front of him, he must have a certain background, and there might be some colossus behind him. But Dai Xuanzi was not afraid. In the Yuqing Divine Kingdom, there were only a limited number of people that he did not dare to casually provoke. However, this kid in front of him who he had never met before was definitely not one of them. You're shouting so happily. Are you in a hurry to reincarnate and die early? Du Xiaofu glanced at him from the corner of his eyes and said disdainfully. Just as Dai Xuanzi had guessed, Du Xiaofu had concealed his cultivation and did not use his full strength. But what Dai Xuanzi did not expect was that if Du Xiaofu really wanted to kill him, he would be smashed into pieces with just a light slap. However, Du Xiaofu did not want to reveal his strength too early. In this space, there were still many powerful existences, and there were also some people among the younger generation of the 33 heavens that he needed to take seriously. He came from a small world and was unfamiliar with this place, so it was better to keep a low profile for the time being. But to Du Xiaofu's surprise, the dozens of people who had retreated into the distance were all stunned when he said those words. In particular, He Jibai's group, who knew Dai Xuanzi better, immediately began to discuss. Who is this guy? He even dares to scold the third young master of the Great Void Divine General's residence? Who doesn't know that the people of the Great Void Divine General's residence have always been arrogant? That guy actually dared to provoke the third young master of the Dai family. He's really bold. Chapter 2702. In the entire Yuqing Divine Kingdom, I don't think anyone would dare to provoke the Great Void Divine General's residence, especially Dai Xuanzi, who is one of the 3 young masters of their family. Maybe it's just like what the purple-robe young man said. He just came from the outside world and has never heard of the Great Void Divine General's residence. He doesn't know what kind of monster it is. I don't know where that guy came from, but he doesn't seem to be weaker than third young master Dai. This is going to be a good show. That guy doesn't look like a good person. I wonder what the outcome will be when he goes up against third young master Dai. The people around He Jibai started to discuss among themselves. They were shocked by Du Xiaofu's performance. But at the same time, they were also looking forward to it. They wanted to see a fierce battle between a dragon and a tiger. The only one who didn't express his opinion was He Jibai. He stood there quietly, his white robe fluttering in the wind. He was handsome like jade, and his brows were slightly furrowed. Young master, I seem to have seen this person before. When he was outside the origin space, he seemed to have been chased by an old man. One of He Jibai's subordinates said softly. You were chased in here? He Jibai muttered. He thought for a while, but didn't say anything else. No matter where he comes from, since he provoked the Great Void Divine General's residence, I'm afraid he won't have a good ending. Maybe he's not weaker than Dai Xuanzi, but there are many people from the Great Void Divine General's residence here. How can 2 fists win against 4 hands? Someone among He Jibai's subordinates sighed. Many people nodded in agreement when they heard this. They looked at Du Xiaofu with pity in their eyes, as if they had already seen his tragic end. The subordinates who came with Dai Xuanzi all had cold smiles on their faces. They didn't rush forward to deal with Du Xiaofu together. They only watched from the side. They were very clear about the third young master's strength. Even though he was at a disadvantage in the initial confrontation, he still held back a certain amount of strength. With him making a move, they only needed to watch from afar and see how he would trample on that insolent brat so that he would know the immensity of heaven and earth. Everyone stopped talking and focused their attention on the 2 people. Originally, He Jibai and the others wanted to enter the cave to investigate, but at this time, Du Xiaofu and Dai Xuanzi were confronting each other again, so he had no choice but to stop and watch from afar. Brat, you will definitely pay for your arrogance. Dai Xuanzi's face turned ashen as he shouted at Du Xiaofu. He actually said that he was in a hurry to reincarnate. Since he was young, no one had ever dared to say such words to him. You sure talk a lot of nonsense. If you want to fight, then let's fight. However, I will spare your life. Didn't you want someone else to be your scapegoat? You can go into the cave and check it out. Du Xiaofu's gaze was fierce as he grunted coldly. During the process of him charging forward, the violet gold heavenly palace erupted with a dazzling light, and a vast imposing aura surged out while dense mist rose up like clouds. Kill! Dai Xuanzi didn't waste his breath any longer. His sword soared through the sky, causing layer after layer of ripples to arise in space, and it surged out like a wave as it moved to intercept Du Xiaofu's sword light. This was the laws of water, and it carried softness within hardness and hardness within softness. Swish, swish, swish. Under its influence, the surrounding space seemed to have transformed into an ocean that was suffused with tempestuous waves, and the tall waves roared as they soared into the sky and charged into the 9 heavens. Pillar after pillar of water pierced through the sky like numerous enormous dragons that danced wildly in the sky. terrifying dragon roars shook the heavens and the earth, causing the surrounding mountains to collapse piece by piece amidst the roars. Mountain rocks rolled down as if a magnificent army was galloping, and dust covered the sky as if it was the end of the world. The enormous dragons condensed from the laws of water roared as their enormous bodies twisted and swooped down from the waves, and they smashed down towards Du Xiaofu. On the other hand, what responded to the enormous dragons with imposing auras was Du Xiaofu's swift counterattack. The violet gold heavenly palace in his hand stabbed towards space, causing a strand of violet gold light to shoot out. The dazzling sword energy was like a primeval sword that smashed through layer upon layer of obstructions in space and directly charged into space. Swish! Swish! Du Xiaofu's figure was like a bolt of lightning as he broke through layer upon layer of obstructions, and the terrifying sword light instantly arrived before Dai Xuanzi. But after being exhausted by countless enormous dragons, the sword light had dimmed down greatly at this moment. Even then, it still possessed extremely terrifying might. Dai Xuanzi's face instantly turned grim when he saw this scene. He never would have thought that the purple-robed young man's strength would be so terrifying. He originally thought that the other party had only concealed a small portion of his cultivation, but only at this moment did he truly realize that the gap between him and the other party was simply too great. The God-seizing stage, he must be at the God-seizing stage. There's no way anyone below the God-seizing stage would have such strength. Dai Xuanzi was greatly shocked. Seeing the sword light coming at him, his expression changed as he hastily brandished his sword again. The power of law surged and enveloped the black longsword in his hand, releasing a misty green light that fiercely collided with Du Xiaofu's sword light. Swish! 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 He Jibai and the other dozens of people felt as if the heavens had poured into their ears in an instant, and their primordial spirits throbbed in fear. Dai Xuanzi, who was in the center of the battle, felt even more so. He only felt his vision go black in an instant, his ears were buzzing, and his mind was completely blank. But he wasn't someone who was easy to deal with. His cultivation was at the top among his peers, so he reacted at the first possible moment. Suddenly, a strange aura fluctuated from his body and filled the space in front of him. In the next instant, a gurgling sound could be heard, and the space in front of him seemed to have turned into a clear spring with endless bubbles rising. A water curtain was formed, and it carried a gentle force as it stood erect in the void. It was at the same time that the water curtain appeared that Du Xiaofu's sword had already arrived and suddenly pierced into the water curtain. Hiss hiss hiss. The heavenly purple-gold fault sword blazed like a piece of red-hot iron thrown into clear water, and it emitted an ear-piercing sound. The space in front of it instantly began to boil like a pot of water that had been boiled. When things reached an extreme, they would move in the opposite direction. The shield formed from the water attribute law carried an extremely powerful defensive power. The power carried by Du Xiaofu's sword light was rapidly consumed, and when it reached Dai Xuanzi's chest, it also dissipated with a hum and was annihilated into nothingness. Following that, the water curtain in front of Dai Xuanzi also disintegrated, and the space returned to its original appearance. Phew! Dai Xuanzi broke out in a cold sweat and let out a long sigh of relief. Du Xiaofu's sudden burst of strength surprised him, but in the end, he was still able to block it at the last moment and didn't cause any harm. At this time, how could he not understand that the gap between him and the purple-robed young man was really too huge? He was very sure now that his opponent was definitely a powerhouse in the seizing divinity realm. He just didn't know which side of the 33 heavens this young man with outstanding talent came from. I don't care which huge figure you are the descendant of, I will never let you go. Dai Xuanzi thought to himself as he stared at Du Xiaofu with intense hatred in his eyes. Coming from another world and entering the territory of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom, even if he was a dragon, he had to coil up, and even if he was a tiger, he had to lie down. Daring to provoke the Great Void Divine General's residence would only result in death in the origin space. With so many people in the Great Void Divine General's residence, it would be easy to deal with an insignificant outsider. However, just as Dai Xuanzi's malicious intent rose in his heart, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. A chill rose from the bottom of his feet, and a chill ran down his spine. This was because he saw a fist enlarging in front of him, and it was coming straight at him without any fancy moves. After a bang, Dai Xuanzi's head emitted a buzz sound, and he felt intense dizziness. He almost fell down. Putting on airs just because you have some strength. Didn't your elders teach you to keep your eyes open and not provoke anyone? Du Xiaofu snorted and punched Dai Xuanzi's face, causing blood to flow out from the corner of his mouth. Dai Xuanzi's body flew sideways from the punch, and he crashed into a mountain in the distance. With a loud boom, the thick mountain peak collapsed, and rocks flew everywhere, causing smoke and dust to billow. "A bastard! I'm going to kill you!" Dai Xuanzi shouted in anger and embarrassment. He climbed up from the ruins and let out an earth-shattering roar. With indescribable hatred, he charged at Du Xiaofu with bared fangs and brandished claws. At this moment, Dai Xuanzi was overwhelmed by shame and anger. He had never suffered such a loss in his life, and no one had ever dared to slap him in the face. At this moment, all he wanted to do was to tear that bastard into pieces to vent his anger. With a loud roar, Dai Xuanzi's long hair danced in the wind and stood up, as if he had gone mad. The law of water condensed into a huge light sword, and he held it in his hand. He slashed down from the sky, aiming for Du Xiaofu's head. "You're just a clown." Du Xiaofu let out another cold snort as a cold glint appeared in his eyes. It had to be said that Dai Xuanzi's strength was not weak. In the divine martial world, other than himself, he was definitely at the peak. Even those old monsters who had cultivated for countless years could not compare to him. What was more terrifying was that behind him, there was a great void divine general's mansion. Du Xiaofu did not know what kind of existence the great void divine general's mansion was, but just by hearing the name, he knew that it was extraordinary. It was definitely a powerful force that was not to be trifled with. However, in Du Xiaofu's eyes, it was not a threat at all. No matter how strong the great void divine general's mansion was, it would not be much stronger than the school of legalism, the school of famers, and the school of vertical and horizontal. He did not want to make enemies, but he would not let others climb over his head and do whatever they wanted. At the very least, Dai Xuanzi's seemingly strong strength was far from enough. As for the great void divine general's mansion, that was something that he would have to deal with in the future. What great void divine general's mansion? You can use it to scare others, but it is useless in front of me. Du Xiaofu frowned and waved his hand. The purple gold heavenly fault in his hand let out a cheerful cry. Light lingered on the sword blade and gradually gathered. Then, it turned into a vast sword light that supported the heavens and the earth, as if it wanted to pierce through the sky. The entire space trembled under this sword light, and huge cracks appeared with a ka-ka-ka sound. The scene was terrifying. Roar of the sacred sword. Du Xiaofu raised the sword radiance and slashed down with brute force. It cut through the void and went straight for Dai Xuanzi's light sword. He still did not use his full strength. He only used martial arts to fight against his opponent. He did not use his strongest law of space and law of lightning at all to hide his strength. However, it was under such circumstances that the moment the two sword radiances collided, the difference in strength was instantly determined. Dai Xuanzi's huge light sword was immediately shattered into pieces. It turned into talisman runes that spun in the void, and then disappeared into nothingness. Du Xiaofu's sword radiance carried the remaining momentum. It was like a huge light pillar that slashed violently on Dai Xuanzi's body. After a boom, Dai Xuanzi was slapped back into the ruins of the mountain peak. He was drowned by the flying rocks, and there was no sound for a long time. How can he be so strong? Dai Xuanzi was defeated so badly. What level has his cultivation reached? Where did this guy come from? He's so strong. He can't be a nobody. He came from another world. He must be the successor of a powerful force in the 33 heavens. Such a force might be even stronger than the Yuqing Divine Kingdom. It might even be on par with the various holy lands of the supreme Changrong heaven. But this is really interesting. Dai Xuanzi, who has always been domineering in the Yuqing Divine Kingdom, suffered such a huge loss today. Among the dozens of onlookers, except for Dai Xuanzi's followers, the rest were extremely shocked. They were amazed by Du Xiaofu's strength. The people on He Jibai's side were even gloating over his misfortune. Third young master. Quick, go and see the third young master. More than 10 people from the Great Void Divine General's residence were furious. They disappeared from where they were and appeared at the collapsed mountain peak in the next moment. Soon they found Dai Xuanzi. At this moment he was covered in blood and dust. His robe was tattered and hung like strips of cloth. He was in a sorry state. The side of his face was swollen. It was the result of Du Xiaofu's punch. Dai Xuanzi's breath was weak and he looked dispirited. He was as miserable as he could be. Kid, how dare you injure the third young master like this? The Great Void Divine General's residence will burn you to ashes. A follower supported Dai Xuanzi's arm and glared at Du Xiaofu as he spoke angrily. His gaze was as if he was looking at a dead man. On the other hand, the rest of the followers stepped out as well. In the blink of an eye, they formed an encirclement and closed in on Du Xiaofu. They intended to attack together and kill Du Xiaofu with all their strength to avenge the third young master. In their opinion, the purple-robed youth was very strong, but he would not be able to escape from the joint attack of more than 10 experts who were at least at the advanced stage of the void-returning realm. However, just as these people moved, Dai Xuanzi's weak voice sounded in their ears. Let's go. Dai Xuanzi gritted his teeth. He wished he could cut Du Xiaofu into 108 pieces with his gaze. Up until now, his subordinates were unable to discern it, but he himself was able to clearly sense that the purple-robed young man's strength was truly unfathomable. It could truly be said to be terrifying, and it was absolutely not much weaker than his two brothers. Once he understood the gap between them, he had to know when to advance and retreat. If he fought head-on, he would be the one to suffer in the end. Revenge is a dish best served cold. I will settle this score with you in the future. After saying this, Dai Xuanzi turned around and prepared to leave this troublesome place. As for the treasure in the cave, there was no need to think about it. With the purple-robed youth, He Jibai, and the others present, there was no chance for him to get it. However, just as Dai Xuanzi was about to leave through a spatial rift, a soft voice spoke again. You want to leave just like that? It's not that easy. The corner of Du Xiaofu's mouth rose slightly and he said coldly, I said that I won't kill you because I want you to explore the cave for everyone. You can't leave just like that. Finish what you have to do first. As he spoke, the purple-gold light on his body suddenly brightened. The golden rock wings on his back flapped rapidly, creating a violent whirlwind. Du Xiaofu was extremely fast and blocked in front of Dai Xuanzi and the others in an instant. This guy is really arrogant. He Jibai and the others were stunned. They were deeply shocked by Du Xiaofu's words. Not only did he beat up the third young master of the Great Void General's estate, but he also wanted them to explore the cave? If something were to happen to Dai Xuanzi, then the enmity between them would be too deep. Kid, don't go too far. The follower who spoke earlier shouted angrily. The spatial tunnel he had just torn was shattered by the slash of the other party's wings. There was no way for him to leave. I'm going too far? Du Xiaofu sneered. Without saying anything, he brazenly attacked. One of his arms shot out like lightning and grabbed the follower by the collar. Then, he threw the follower toward the cave. The follower did resist, but he was shocked to find that the power in his body was completely sealed in a short period of time, making him unable to move. He could only watch helplessly as he was sent flying. His body drew an arc in the air, and then fell into the pitch-black hole. Chapter 2703. Seeing such a scene, not to mention Dai Xuanzi himself, even the faces of his followers turned purple. Previously, they were arrogant and wanted others to risk their lives to explore the cave. They looked as if they could not be refused. Many people present knew that it was impossible for Dai Xuanzi to fulfill his promise of an upper-grade divine weapon in the name of the residence of the Great Void Divine General. Especially He Jibai and the dozens of people around him, they understood his style of doing things very well. Therefore, in the beginning, although many people were discussing fervently and were eager to give it a try, no one directly agreed to his request. However, no one expected that the purple-robed young man who jumped out of nowhere dared to touch the whiskers of the residents of the Great Void Divine General. He was too bold. Dai Xuanzi was not only beaten up by him, but he also wanted to throw them into the cave. Anyone could discern that the danger within was definitely extraordinary. If anything were to happen to Dai Xuanzi, then the enmity between the violet-robed young man and the Great Void Divine General's estate would really be irreconcilable. The moment Dai Xuanzi's subordinate was thrown into the cave, everyone's eyes turned to look at him at the same time. Compared to the feud between Du Xiaofu and Dai Xuanzi, they were more interested in the changes in the cave. They wanted to know immediately. However, to their disappointment, there was no unusual movement from there. There were still flashes of light inside and there were no unusual fluctuations. The person who was thrown in did not move either. It was like a clay ox entering the sea. Why is there no movement? Is there no danger down there? That's impossible. We're just standing here, but we can feel the fear from the depths of our souls. It can't be fake. Could it be that the person was killed by some powerful existence and there was no sound at all? If that's the case, it's too scary. Many people began to wonder if the danger inside was so terrifying that it could kill people in an instant. The few people who were originally eager to give it a try because of Dai Xuanzi's temptations finally began to feel a chill run down their spines. They secretly rejoiced that they hadn't let the benefits get to their heads so quickly. That guy who was thrown down had a late-stage void return realm cultivation. He was not even comparable to him. If they were to enter the cave, they wouldn't even know how they died. Something's not right. Du Xiaofu also muttered. His brows were slightly furrowed and his eyes narrowed. Others might not know, but he knew very well that although he had placed a restriction on Dai Xuanzi's subordinate, it was only an extremely weak seal. It would only trap him for a short while at most. Du Xiaofu had already calculated that when that person fell into the cave, he would be able to break the seal in an instant and restore his original cultivation. Otherwise, sending a person who had lost all his strength to scout the situation was no different from sending him to his death. However, things didn't develop in the direction Du Xiaofu had imagined. After that person entered the cave, he didn't make any sound at all, nor did he use his cultivation to escape. It was obvious that there was a terrifying existence below. In an instant, that person lost the ability to resist and didn't even have the chance to howl. Such a situation caused a wisp of nervousness to arise in Du Xiaofu's heart. There's bound to be something extremely rare in a place with great danger. Everyone had the same thought. They wanted to know what kind of treasure was hidden below the cave, but no one dared to go down rashly. They were afraid that they would lose their lives instead of obtaining the treasure. Let's go down and have a look, Du Xiaofu said softly. He turned his gaze and stared at another subordinate beside Dai Xuanzi. The golden rock behind him flapped its wings and charged in front of that subordinate, then it picked him up. The difference in strength between the two of them was so great that Dai Xuanzi's subordinate was thrown out by Du Xiaofu before he could react. Dai Xuanzi's eyes were about to burst into flames. He was so angry that his lips were trembling. Throwing his subordinates right in front of his face was a blatant slap to his face. This was simply too arrogant. Dai Xuanzi was furious, but he didn't dare to do anything else. Otherwise, he wasn't sure if the audacious purple-robed young man would throw him in as well. Dai Xuanzi didn't say anything and just stared at him with hatred. As long as he could get away today, he would definitely make him kneel in front of him in the future. Du Xiaofu didn't care about Dai Xuanzi's murderous gaze at all. The situation inside the cave was more attractive than Dai Xuanzi's existence. After he threw the second person out, his figure moved swiftly and flew high into the sky, looking down at the entrance of the cave from above. At the same time, he spread out the powerful power of his soul to spy on the situation inside. After that person entered the cave, Du Xiaofu finally saw a ripple in space several hundred meters below him. Then, that person's figure vanished in an instant. It was as if he had entered another space, and even the power of his soul couldn't detect him. However, when Du Xiaofu looked down from above, he could only see that the cave was like a world of lava. His eyes were filled with a dazzling scarlet red that released intense waves of air. There was also a dangerous aura that penetrated his body and soul. Could there be a spatial barrier that's isolated the existence of another space? Du Xiaofu speculated. His soul couldn't detect any information at all, so he could only make a judgment based on his feelings. If that was the case, it would explain why the two people who entered the cave didn't make any noise at all. Presumably, the two of them had already entered another space at this time. Du Xiaofu was very curious and wanted to know what was inside. He didn't waste any more time and rushed straight down into the cave. He went in. There's obviously extreme danger inside. Why did he go in just like that? What should we do? Should we go in too? When they saw Du Xiaofu rush into the cave, there was a commotion among the people around He Jibai. They had been there for some time, but they all stopped because of the dangerous aura emitted from the cave. No one had the guts to go in first to check it out. They were afraid that their actions would benefit others, and the losses would outweigh the gains. At that moment, the purple-robed young man also rushed in after throwing the two people from the Great Void General's residence in. Could he have discovered something? Everyone was hesitant and didn't know what to do. He Jibai's subordinates all stared at his face, hoping that he would give them clear instructions. However, He Jibai was also hesitating and didn't know what to do. Let's go. On the other side, when Dai Xuanzi saw Du Xiaofu's figure disappear, he said to his subordinates. He took a deep look at the dark cave and gritted his teeth. With a strong sense of unwillingness, he turned around and left. The rest of the people around him all heaved a sigh of relief. They felt lucky to have survived a disaster. The purple-robed young man was too powerful. Not to mention their third young master, even the other two young masters in the Great Void General's residence were not much stronger than him. The cave definitely contained extreme danger. Otherwise, their two companions wouldn't have gone in without making a sound. If everyone was thrown in by the young man, the result would be obvious. At that moment, the terrifying fellow had finally disappeared. If they didn't take the opportunity to leave, when would they? Leave a few people nearby and keep an eye on that brat. If there's any news, report to me at once. In the territory of Yuqing Holy Kingdom, it's not his place to do as he pleases. Dai Xuanzi's eyes were extremely gloomy. His face looked as if it was about to drip water as he ordered. As soon as he finished speaking, the group of people quickly flew into the sky and left the valley. He Jibai saw all of this. He still looked indifferent and elegant, appearing extremely otherworldly. After watching Dai Xuanzi leave, He Jibai once again turned his gaze to the dark cave entrance. Two of you, go down with me to take a look. The rest of you, stay here in case anything happens. He ordered softly. Great opportunities are naturally accompanied by great dangers. However, if a cultivator doesn't experience danger, he won't be able to achieve great cultivation. No matter who gets the treasure in the end, it's good for us to go down and take a look. As He Jibai spoke, his figure swept forward. The two people beside him followed at the same time and quickly entered the cave entrance. In fact, if it wasn't for the conflict between Dai Xuanzi and Du Xiaofu, he would have gone down to check it out long ago. After witnessing the purple-robed young man's strength, He Jibai's interest in him was no less than the treasure in the cave. In the valley, there were less than 20 people left watching Du Xiaofu, He Jibai, and the other three enter the cave. Other than the dozen followers of He Jibai, the others were all bewildered and didn't know if they should follow them. Experts like Dai Xuanzi and He Jibai had been so careful before. They didn't want to go down and throw away their lives. However, the temptation of the treasure was too great. No one wanted to give up just like that. In the end, four people walked out and quickly rushed into the cave. The moment Du Xiaofu rushed into the cave, he felt a chill in his primordial spirit. An indescribable feeling of palpitations arose in his heart. It wasn't a sudden feeling. It was something that had happened outside. It was just that it was magnified many times. As far as his eyes could see, the space below was extremely wide. There was a large area that looked like underground lava. It was releasing blazing heat, burning the space inside to the point that it was constantly distorting and collapsing. Even with Du Xiaofu's cultivation, he couldn't help but feel an intense heat under such high temperature. Fine beads of sweat covered his body and flowed down. When Du Xiaofu descended to a position, He suddenly stopped and didn't continue forward. Less than half a meter below him was the place where the two people he had thrown in earlier had disappeared. There was an invisible barrier there, which should be a door to an unknown space. Once touched, one's entire body would disappear. No one knew what kind of situation the two people who had entered earlier were in. It was hard to say whether they were dead or alive. Du Xiaofu didn't dare to rashly descend. He just stood quietly in the air and observed, hoping to find some useful clues. Du Xiaofu's gaze swept across the lava space below. There was a vast sea of lava there. It was like boiling water, and fiery red heat waves rippled out. But at a certain moment, his eyes suddenly narrowed. His heart thumped as if he had been electrocuted. Is this the treasure? In his line of sight, a blood-red lotus took root in the lava, swaying along with the rising and falling red waves. Specks of crystalline light were slowly released, but in Du Xiaofu's eyes, the unremarkable light was extremely dazzling. It was like a tiny sun, and the invisible heat seemed to be able to scorch the soul and incinerate it into nothingness. Below the blood-red lotus, a few jade-green lotus leaves floated. A few drops of crimson lava rolled on them, making the lotus look even more enchanting. This was an extremely strange scene. There was a blood lotus growing in the sea of magma. It could be considered a good match. However, with the addition of a few dark green lotus leaves, one could not help but feel an extreme sense of disharmony. Under such terrifying heat, ordinary plants shouldn't be able to survive. But at this moment, this strange scene was clearly presented in front of Du Xiaofu. Blood flame lotus. That's the blood flame lotus. I didn't expect there to be such a treasure here. Just as Du Xiaofu was in a daze, He Jibai and the others who had entered the cave arrived. When he saw the strange plant, he could not help but cry out in extreme shock. Other than that, there was also an indescribable excitement. Blood flame lotus? Du Xiaofu was confused. He had never heard of a treasure like the blood flame lotus before. There seemed to be no record of this item in the many ancient books in Shenwu world. When he heard He Jibai mention it, Du Xiaofu couldn't help but look at him and ask, "May I ask, what's so special about this blood flame lotus?" Before He Jibai could answer, his two subordinates and the four experts who had just followed him all looked at Du Xiaofu with puzzled eyes, revealing an expression of disbelief. You don't even know about the blood flame lotus? Where did this guy come from? Could it be that he's faking it to make fun of us? The few of them were muttering in their hearts, but no one voiced out their suspicions. They were very suspicious. With the strength of the purple-robed youth, he could definitely be considered a powerhouse among the younger generation in the 33 heavens. Perhaps he came from a force that was not weaker than the sacred grounds of the Chongrong heaven. But his cultivation and knowledge didn't seem to match. Therefore, some people even guessed that this guy was mocking them. It was also with such thoughts that the few people who had entered this place later became even more vigilant, afraid that they would follow in the footsteps of the two people in the Divine General's residence. Brother, you may not know, but this blood flame lotus is a strange item that can only be seen in the land of extreme yang. In such an extreme environment, there shouldn't be any plants. But when things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. Extreme yin gives birth to yang, and extreme yang will also give birth to extreme yin objects. The blood flame divine lotus is an item of extreme yin, and it contains an extremely dense amount of fire attribute energy. If a cultivator who has grasped the laws of fire were to obtain it and refine it, they would definitely be able to obtain unparalleled benefits along the way. He Jibai didn't think much of it and only smiled lightly as he explained to Du Xiaofu. He didn't have any vigilance or fear towards this purple-robed youth. Instead, because of the strength he had displayed when dealing with Dai Xuanzi and the others, He Jibai wanted to befriend him. Of course, the more friends he had, the better, especially those who were strong. Since this blood flame lotus is an extreme yin object, why does it contain the strongest fire attribute energy? Du Xiaofu was a little puzzled and asked He Jibai politely. He Jibai unconsciously had a good impression of this young man who looked similar to Chengguyu. At the very least, when Dai Xuanzi had asked for an outsider to come down and explore first, this person had rejected very straightforwardly. Obviously, he wasn't an unscrupulous person. Du Xiaofu himself had just arrived in the 33 heavens and knew nothing about everything here. He needed someone to explain many things to him so that it would be convenient for him to do things in the future. Extreme yang gives birth to yin, so this blood flame lotus is naturally an extreme yin object. However, when things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. It's common sense for an extreme yin object to carry the power of extreme yang. If it had the power of extreme yin, it wouldn't have formed such an environment. I'm afraid it would have clashed with this lava world long ago and destroyed this place. He Jibai smiled faintly as he explained unhurriedly. As he spoke, his gaze slowly shifted to the blood flame lotus with an indescribable desire. Could it be that Brother He's cultivation method is the law of fire? Du Xiaofu glanced at He Jibai and asked. Although He Jibai's expression was very calm, he didn't hide the passion in his eyes. It was obvious that he coveted this treasure very much. To tell you the truth, little brother, this one cultivates the law of fire. He Jibai didn't hide anything and answered rather straightforwardly. Since that's the case, let's go down together. As for who can obtain it, that will depend on their own luck. Du Xiaofu nodded and said. He admired He Jibai's straightforward character and didn't put on any pretense. Although He Jibai's temperament was completely different from Qian Guyu's, the two's characters were extremely similar in this regard. Chapter 2704. Therefore, Du Xiaofu didn't want to become enemies with him so easily. As for the bloody fire lotus in the lava space, it was better to depend on one's own luck. However, after Du Xiaofu finished speaking, the handsome He Jibai frowned slightly. There seems to be a barrier here that leads to an unknown place. It must be used to protect the bloody fire lotus. If it had a physical form, we might have a chance of breaking it. However, we don't have any information about the spatial barrier at all, so it's impossible to break it. He Jibai looked at the space beneath his feet and said softly. When Du Xiaofu had thrown Dai Xuanzi's two subordinates down, he had also seen the situation here. Needless to say, the existence of the formless space was to prevent anyone from snatching the bloody fire lotus. As He Jibai spoke, he stretched out a finger and swiped at the space beneath his feet. Rip! The space cracked soundlessly, and a pitch-black spatial crack appeared in front of everyone's eyes. However, it was this spatial crack that didn't lead directly to the lava space, but to an unknown place. In fact, the instant the crack appeared, a deathly aura burst forth from within, causing everyone's hearts to turn cold. The 8 people present couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He Jibai didn't dare to delay. With a stroke of his hand, the spatial crack was smoothed out and disappeared. The terrifying aura that came from within also disappeared. The experience of this moment made the few of them panic. Only Du Xiaofu still retained some calmness. This spatial barrier probably wasn't formed naturally. Someone must have deliberately set it up here. Du Xiaofu narrowed his eyes and said. He Jibai and the others nodded in agreement. Following that, everyone also thought that since someone had set up a spatial barrier here, it must have been to wait for the bloody fire lotus to mature before plucking it. If they wanted to obtain it, it was very likely that they would have to face an unknown expert. With such a method set up, if they barged in without knowing the reason, they would definitely be trapped in that strange space and unable to escape. Since we're already here, if we don't think of a way to obtain it, how can we be worthy of our experience in the origin space? He Jibai looked at the bloody fire lotus with a determined gaze, without any intention of retreating. Then let's see if this spatial barrier can stop me. Du Xiaofu shouted softly, and the purple gold light on his body suddenly burst forth. The space dharma was slowly activated and began to draw out an invisible power. Although Du Xiaofu's dharma's dharma in terms of dharma of space wasn't as dharma's dharma of lightning, but it wasn't weak. After Xiaofu's, his dharma's dharma of space also, as his dharma's dharma of space. With the profoundness of the first form of Fuyao, there was still a chance for him to break through the spatial barrier beneath his feet and directly enter the lava space. However, the final result, Du Xiaofu was nigh. He had tried many times, but no matter what, he couldn't break through the restrictions of the spatial door. Dharma's Dharma body was indeed mysterious, but there was a huge restriction. The space that had to be crossed had to be within the range of his Dharma body's Dharma body. At this moment, although the spatial barrier didn't block the vision of Du Xiaofu and the others, it firmly blocked their Dharma body's Dharma body, and they couldn't break through at all. Even with Du Xiaofu's Dharma body, it was difficult for him to do so. Looks like I have no choice but to reveal my strength. Du Xiaofu sighed in his heart. Perhaps only by using the Dharma body would he be able to break through the restrictions here. If little Demon Du was here, wouldn't he have probably plunged straight in long ago? Without much hesitation, a golden light rose from Du Xiaofu's body and separated from his body, transforming into a huge monkey-shaped creature that emitted a blazing light. It was Du Xiaofu's Dharma body. Just by sitting there quietly, a vast and terrifying aura was released, causing the surrounding space to tremble slightly. Du Xiaofu's Dharma body took a step forward and headed downwards. In an instant, it came into contact with the spatial barrier. As the golden light shone brightly, the Dharma body directly stepped in and broke through the invisible barrier. Following that, a gust of cold wind howled out. It whistled and danced as it soared into the sky. The aura of the demonic gods surged, making it indescribably terrifying. Du Xiaofu could only feel an endless corrosive power pouring out, wrapping around a part of his leg and frantically corroding it. The Dharma body was constantly being consumed. He didn't think too much about it. The Dharma body directly went downwards, bringing along his body and disappearing from the spot. Then, under the gaze of He Zhibai and the others, he appeared in the lava space. He went in just like that? The seven of them looked at each other in dismay. They couldn't help but feel shocked by Du Xiaofu's methods. What a powerful Dharma body. Furthermore, it's a special existence like the Dharma body's Dharma body. This person's cultivation method is really strange. Previously, he used the methods of the great golden-winged rock clan, but his Dharma body is the Dharma body's Dharma body. There's really a lot of special things about him. The blood flame divine lotus is his. We can't enter from here. The few of them couldn't help but reveal bitter smiles. While they were shocked by Du Xiaofu's strength, they also had an indescribable feeling of admiration. This person's strength is probably very strong in the seizing divinity realm. In the entire Yuqing divine kingdom, there aren't many young experts like him. He Zhibai's usually calm face couldn't help but throb at this moment. Even though Du Xiaofu hid a lot of his strength, He Zhibai could still see some of it and instantly made the corresponding deduction. Since such an expert had broken through the restrictions of the space barrier and entered the lava space, the blood flame divine lotus was naturally in his bag. What a high temperature! It's even more terrifying than the lava world where I obtained the heavenly flame void lightning. After Du Xiaofu entered the lava space, he instantly let out such a sigh. He had already summoned the green spirit armor and covered the surface of his body. At the same time, there was a faint layer of purplish gold light that enveloped his body. The thunder martial vein was constantly circulating, blocking the terrifying temperature from invading his body. Let's get the blood flame divine lotus first. Du Xiaofu flew straight down. In a flash, he appeared above the boiling lava and came close to the blood flame divine lotus. He stretched out his hand and his celestial qi rapidly circulated. It turned into a huge palm of light and directly grabbed the blood-red lotus. After a swoosh sound, Du Xiaofu was surprised to find that the blood flame divine lotus was really caught by his palm of light. I got it so easily? That can't be. Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows and muttered to himself in disbelief. Generally speaking, after reaching a certain level, spiritual beings of the heavens and earth would develop their own consciousness and spiritual intelligence. They would have the ability to seek fortune and avoid danger. Even after gaining spiritual intelligence, they would be able to cultivate a demon spirit body and become extremely powerful. For example, in the demon realm of the divine martial world, there were many such experts, such as Huolei Laozu, Ancestor Wanshi, Monarch Blackwater, Dai Lu, Purple Lotus Fairy, Rainbow Moon, and the Heavenly Flame Void Lightning. The strength of those demon spirit experts was definitely very powerful. It was impossible for them to allow others to casually invade them and refine them like ordinary divine elixirs. Therefore, when Du Xiaofu easily grasped the stalk of the bloodfire divine lotus in his hand, a strange feeling arose in his heart. He felt that it was extremely unreal. However, this unreal feeling only lasted for a short breath of time. His body suddenly trembled, and a feeling of horror arose spontaneously. "Oh no!" Du Xiaofu shouted. The huge palm of light that he condensed spread out, wanting to throw the blood-flame divine lotus away. However, at this time, he had already grabbed it and brought it to his side. As soon as he threw it, a fierce wave of heat suddenly gushed out from the blood-flame divine lotus and rushed towards Du Xiaofu. This wave of heat was so hot that it instantly filled the entire lava space, as if it could burn through everything. It wanted to burn Du Xiaofu's body and origin spirit to ashes at the same time. Subsequently, the blood-flame divine lotus suddenly emanated a vast and dazzling glow. The glow of the blood-red glow was like a scorching sun that was dazzling to the eye, and it simply intended to illuminate Du Xiaofu's body and soul core to the point they became transparent. However, this was just the beginning. Du Xiaofu felt a strong sense of danger. Under the light of the blood-flame divine lotus, his immortal Xian body began to melt. The origin spirit in the mud pill palace in his mind was also disintegrating and disintegrating. Immense pain attacked every inch of Du Xiaofu's body, from inside to outside. It was pervasive, making him feel like he was about to be burned into a pool of blood. This was not the most terrifying thing. What made Du Xiaofu's scalp tingle the most was that his body was imprisoned by an invisible force, and he could not move at all. No matter how he struggled, he could only dance in place. He could not break free from the power of the blood-flame divine lotus. How can this blood-flame divine lotus be so terrifying? Du Xiaofu shouted in his heart. The laws of space and the laws of thunder were displayed. Dense, tiny lightning bolts flowed rapidly through the veins in his body, tightly wrapping his body and origin spirit to resist the terrible burning sensation. At the same time, the first form of Fuyao, which was supported by the laws of space, was activated. He wanted to break free as soon as possible. However, Du Xiaofu was shocked to discover that not only had his body been imprisoned, but the surrounding space had also been burned into a huge fault by the terrifying high temperature. Chapter 2705. The space around Du Xiaofu kept collapsing, burned to ashes by the blazing high temperature. This had nothing to do with the laws of space. It did not mean that the bloody flame divine lotus had the power of the laws of space. This was purely the effect of the fire attribute power. It affected the space, causing the surrounding space to collapse horribly. Even Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit was burned to the point of being distorted and annihilated, unable to pass through, let alone use the Fuyao style to escape. This kind of situation made Du Xiaofu feel terrible in his heart. He could only continuously circulate the thunder martial vein, using the light of thunder and lightning to protect his body and primordial spirit. But it was also at this moment that the blood flame divine lotus suddenly spewed out large amounts of terrifying crimson flames that flowed like liquid. It was like the surging magma in this space, but also like molten iron in a boiler. It was incomparably scorching. The boiling flames flowed like a substance, wrapping Du Xiaofu's body within. According to Du Xiaofu's estimation, if he used the laws of thunder and lightning to forcefully bombard it, he might be able to break open an opening for him to escape. However, he did not do so immediately. He wanted to see what would happen next. In this origin space, there is actually someone who can break into this space. At this moment, such a voice suddenly rang out, entering Du Xiaofu's mind. This voice sounded like it came from an old man. It was gloomy and hoarse, suffused with the vicissitudes of life and viciousness. It was indescribably terrifying. Du Xiaofu's heart trembled. In his mind's perception, he could see that within the boundless flames that enveloped him, there seemed to be a pair of eyes staring at him. As expected, this bloody flame divine lotus has developed intelligence and seems to have fallen into its trap. Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly. How could he not understand the current situation? Needless to say, this bloody flame divine lotus had already developed intelligence. The moment he grabbed it, he was attacked and trapped in the boundless flames, unable to break free. Just as he was thinking, the gloomy and hoarse voice rang out again. "Kid, you are quite capable to be able to break through the space barrier I set up. Since that's the case, then use your strength to help this old man." As the old man spoke, Du Xiaofu's shocked gaze, he saw a bare skeleton appear in the terrifying sea of flames, walking towards him, step by step. Isn't this the bloody flame divine lotus? Why is there a skeleton like this? Du Xiaofu editor. Du Xiaofu, Du Xiaofu, Du Xiaofu. In his line of sight, the skeleton seemed to be made of red-hot iron rods, giving off a glaring light. Layers and layers of flames wrapped around it, releasing a scorching heat. A ball of dim light flickered in the skull. It seemed to be the power of a living being's soul. This was clearly a human skeleton. It had nothing to do with a world spirit treasure like the bloody flame divine lotus. How could such a strange thing happen in such a terrifyingly hot space of lava? Before Du Xiaofu editor. Before Du Xiaofu translated by Zephizi edited by Elrianthe withered ghost claw reached out and pressed down on Du Xiaofu translated by Zephizi edited by Elrianth boundless power poured out, wrapping around Du Xiaofu translated by Zephizi edited by Elrianth. Who are you? How could Du Xiaofu translated by Zephizi edited by Elrianth translated by Zephizi edited by Elrianth Du Xiaofu translated by Zephizi edited by Elrianth. He let out a loud roar from his throat, and without even thinking about it, his origin divinity swiftly drew upon the laws of lightning to condense an enormous pillar of lightning that shot out with a bang. It was like a heavenly pillar that fiercely smashed onto the flaming skeleton's bone claw. Boom! The power of thunder exploded, and a huge sound shook the space. The surrounding sea of fire also set off a monstrous wave that swept out in all directions. A large amount of lightning energy surged, forming a terrifying storm that instantly pushed the flaming skeleton back several meters. However, the ferocious lightning did not cause any harm to him. He's even mastered the complete laws of lightning. He's really extraordinary at such a young age. The flaming skeleton spoke in a hoarse voice, and it appeared to be quite surprised. He didn't show much anger at being forced back by Du Xiaofu's attack. So strong. Du Xiaofu was even more shocked. The strength of the skeleton made him feel apprehensive. Only now did he have a certain guess. Perhaps the flaming skeleton was not a manifestation of the blood flame divine lotus. Instead, it was an absolute expert. However, due to some special reasons, its body had been damaged, and only a skeleton was left. However, its soul was not destroyed, and its body was not completely destroyed. As a result, it could still control its skeleton to attack Du Xiaofu. Even so, the strength it displayed was still far too terrifying. Even though it was heavily injured, it was still able to withstand a strike from Du Xiaofu's complete laws of lightning without suffering any harm. This situation caused Du Xiaofu's heart to become extremely heavy. This person must have been an extraordinary person in the past. If he was at his peak, it would be a piece of cake for him to kill Du Xiaofu. From his words, Du Xiaofu finally understood that the spatial barrier at the entrance of the lava space was also set up by this person. The true meaning of the laws of space it interpreted was extremely vast, and it was not something that Du Xiaofu could fathom. With Du Xiaofu's attainments in the laws of space, it was impossible for him to set up such a method. He was far from being able to compare with this person. Your talent is indeed quite good. I'm afraid that even in the entire 33 heavens, it would be very difficult to find a young man like you. However, today, this old master has no choice but to ruthlessly erase an outstanding junior and use your strength to completely refine the blood flame divine lotus true spirit. At this moment, the flaming skeleton spoke in his hoarse voice again. His hollow eye sockets stared at Du Xiaofu as his jaw opened and closed. Tell me which sect you come from. As long as this old master can escape today, I will definitely compensate you for your sect. As he spoke, a wave of heat surged towards Du Xiaofu. This hot current carried an endless pressure that wanted to crush his physical body into a pancake. Senior! Feeling the terrifying force approaching, Du Xiaofu immediately shouted, "Senior, this junior has no intention of intruding into this place and has no intention of offending you. As long as Senior lets me leave here and tells me where Senior's family and friends are, this junior will definitely invite them here to help Senior. You don't need to use my strength to help you refine the blood flame divine lotus." The shock in his heart was great. Only now did he realize that this skeleton master had fallen into this state in order to completely refine the blood flame divine lotus. Presumably, at this time, this skeleton master's true strength was less than a tenth of what it was, but it was still enough to pose a great threat to Du Xiaofu. Faced with such a situation, how could Du Xiaofu just sit there and wait for death? If he could defeat this skeleton master, Du Xiaofu would have directly attacked. Why would he waste so much time talking nonsense with him? However, the situation was beyond his control, so he had no choice but to bow his head. "I can't wait any longer. I've been fighting with the blood flame divine lotus for tens of thousands of years, but I still haven't been able to subdue it. Now, my remaining strength won't allow me to wait any longer. I might suffer a backlash at any time. Only by killing you will I have a chance to refine it. Young man, don't blame this old man for being ruthless. You can only blame yourself for barging in." As the flaming skeleton spoke, it approached Du Xiaofu step by step. The surging flame energy was vast and mighty, as if it wanted to melt Du Xiaofu into the purest energy. Du Xiaofu felt as if every inch of his flesh and blood was about to be torn apart, and the pain penetrated his bones. The blood in his body was boiling hot as if it was burning. As he circulated his celestial qi, it was constantly flowing through his flesh and blood. The power of his soul was also being consumed rapidly. When it entered the monstrous sea of fire, it was directly refined into wisps of mist and then transformed into the purest energy. Since that's the case, then this junior won't hold back. Du Xiaofu endured the pain and said through gritted teeth. Perhaps this old man didn't mean to kill Du Xiaofu, but at this moment, he had no choice but to kill him in order to save his own life. One could imagine that he was currently facing great danger. Although he had promised that he would compensate Du Xiaofu's close friends and family after he escaped, this was useless to Du Xiaofu. No amount of compensation could compare to the importance of his life. Facing this old man who wanted to take his life, how could Du Xiaofu easily admit defeat and allow the other party to kill him? The qi in his body burned fiercely, and the purple-gold heavenly tower appeared in his hand. Without thinking, he slashed down at the flaming skeleton. Emptiness of heaven and earth. The second of the 3 space-splitting swords was brazenly launched, transforming into an incomparably mighty sword aura that emitted ear-piercing whistles. Waves of terrifying energy surged, as if it wanted to cleave apart a part of the world. At this moment, in this space enveloped by boundless flames, the sword aura was even more dazzling than the surrounding flames. It was as if in an instant, only this sword aura was left in the entire space, and all the brilliance was suppressed. Terrifying energy fluctuated, causing the void to rumble, emitting a terrifying trembling sound. "You are indeed a good seedling. Unfortunately, I have no choice but to kill you today." Opposite him, the flaming skeleton seemed to be sighing softly, but there wasn't much regret in its tone. For such a terrifying expert, even if he killed an outstanding junior, it wouldn't be able to shake his heart. Chapter 2706. Translator. H.2 Mr. Du Xiaofu did not dare to place his hopes on the kindness that had sprouted in the skeletal old man's heart. A dazzling sword ray soared into the sky and fiercely slashed towards the flaming skeleton. At his peak, this old man's strength was definitely incomparably terrifying. At the very least, he was much stronger than the old man sent by the school of vertical and horizontal to kill him. At the very least, he was at the later stages of the true severing stage. Du Xiaofu did not dare to let his guard down in the slightest. With a berserk aura, he slashed down with his sword. This sword ray seemed to pierce through the heavens and earth. It broke open a huge spatial crack and extended all the way to the flaming skeleton. Purplish gold runes pulsed, releasing a peerless power that caused the entire space to tremble. In front of this old man, no matter how much resistance you have, it's useless. The flaming skeleton's jaw opened and closed as it spoke. Then, two clusters of flames rose from its withered claws, and its hands directly pulled the void to the sides. Chi-la, a sound like silk being torn rang out, and a long and narrow mouth instantly appeared in the space in front of him. It was suffused with a faint black light, as if it led to a fiery abyss, and a terrifying aura was emitted. The sword ray that Du Xiaofu had unleashed had directly slashed into the spatial crack. However, unexpectedly, such a terrifying attack did not cause any ferocious movements. After the sword ray that pierced through the heavens and earth entered the spatial crack, it was like an old sow that had fallen into a quagmire. It only emitted a few soft sounds like a few bubbles. As for the flaming skeleton's body, its body only swayed twice, as if it had suffered some moderate vibrations. Then, it stabilized and continued to walk towards Du Xiaofu. At the same time that Du Xiaofu was shocked, he could not help but curse in his heart. This old man's strength was simply too terrifying. With just a little bit of his remaining strength, he was able to unleash such a wonderful technique. His all-out attack was actually lured into a spatial crack by his opponent. It did not cause the slightest bit of damage, not even a decent sound. As a cultivator who had mastered the laws of space, Du Xiaofu could tell at a glance that the old man was using the laws of space. Du Xiaofu's Fu Yao was indeed very mysterious, but compared to this old man's technique, it was not overbearing enough. From the spatial barrier he had set up at the entrance of the cave to the way he had diverted Du Xiaofu's attack into nothingness, it could be seen that the old man's attainments in the laws of space were extremely profound. Du Xiaofu even suspected that he had mastered the complete laws of space. If this old man hadn't been seriously injured, I wouldn't have needed to expend so much effort to deal with a junior like you. The old man let out a long sigh and took a step forward in the sea of fire. He had the ability to shrink the ground into an inch. After taking a step forward, he passed through the barriers of space and directly appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. This feeling seemed to be very similar to what his enemies felt when he used Fu Yao to fight with others in the past. Under Du Xiaofu's gaze, a bone claw pressed down once again. Raging flames covered the area, enveloping his body within. During this process, he didn't even have time to react. In an instant, he felt a huge force of restriction land on his body, and his body instantly lost the ability to move. This caused Du Xiaofu's heart to be filled with horror. The flaming skeleton's use of the laws of space could be said to be superb. Coupled with the power of the laws of fire, it imprisoned Du Xiaofu in the blink of an eye, making him unable to move at all. "I'm sorry, young man," the flaming skeleton softly said in the raging flames. Blazing flames burst out from its hollow eye sockets, as if they could see through Du Xiaofu's body and into his soul. It was indescribably strange. Arg! Under the assault of the terrifying temperature, Du Xiaofu could not help but howl loudly. His expression was one of extreme pain. Every inch of his flesh and blood was being burned. Strands of power were constantly being squeezed out and condensed in the flames, turning into the purest energy. The pure power was like threads that intertwined with each other in the flames. Then, under the control of the flaming skeleton, they went to an unknown place and were buried in the flames that filled the sky. "But even if I die, I will not let you off so easily, you old bastard." Du Xiaofu's throat issued an extremely tragic scream. Although his body could not move, he still erupted with an extremely fierce aura. His ink-black hair stood on end, shooting straight into the sky and fluttering in the firelight. It had been a long time since he had felt so powerless. Even when he faced the demon god more than a year ago, the gap between them was not as great as it was now. At his peak, the flaming skeleton old man was probably not stronger than the demon god. However, within the 33 heavens, there was no suppression of the world's strength, so Du Xiaofu could not take advantage of him at all. The difference in cultivation suppressed him, making it difficult for him to resist. It was just that Du Xiaofu was absolutely unwilling to give up his life for a complete stranger's sake. As he howled, the primordial spirit in his mind emitted a purplish gold light, illuminating the entire Naiwan palace. At the same time, the thunder martial vein began to rapidly revolve under his control. Tiny but terrifying bolts of lightning flowed through his body, forming strange patterns that covered the surface of his body like blood vessels. The law imprint glowed, and the purple gold light was as dazzling as the purple sun. Blood flame divine lotus, I know you can definitely hear and understand what I'm saying. If you don't want to die, then join forces with me to deal with this old bastard. Du Xiaofu's eyes were red as he shouted loudly. His voice was loud and clear, echoing throughout the entire fiery space. The flaming skeleton old man had become like this because he wanted to refine the blood flame divine lotus. It was obvious that he was injured by the blood flame divine lotus. It could be imagined that the original strength of the blood flame divine lotus must be extremely powerful. It was not something that an ordinary person could subdue. The old man had not completely refined it, so it must still have some intelligence. If Du Xiaofu could persuade it to join forces with him to deal with the skeletal old man, it would definitely pose a great threat to him. Sure enough, as soon as Du Xiaofu's voice fell, a misty spiritual fluctuation appeared in the space. This fluctuation was very subtle and extremely weak, but it was still keenly captured by Du Xiaofu. He could not help but be overjoyed. In this space, apart from him and the skeletal old man, the third creature was undoubtedly the blood flame divine lotus. At this moment, the other party had sent out a spiritual fluctuation, indicating that he had agreed to his suggestion. Not good, you brat, you actually tricked me. At this moment, the flaming skeleton also cried out in alarm. Just as he finished speaking, the unusual mental energy ripple in the air suddenly grew many times stronger. Another wave of scorching heat wave came attacking, wrapping around the skeletal old man and Du Xiaofu. Old bastard, if you want to take advantage of me, you'd better give up. How could Du Xiaofu delay any longer? He closed his eyes lightly while the energy of his soul core surged out, causing violet gold light to burst out from his body, and it was enshrouded in a multicolored glow. For the time being, he did not care about the pain in his physical body. With the existence of the blue spirit armor and the strength of the immortal Shen body, he believed that he would not be burned to ashes in this sea of flames. As long as a part of his body could be preserved, he would soon be able to recover to his peak state. Du Xiaofu had already made up his mind. As long as the confrontation between the blood flame divine lotus and the old man reached the most critical point, he would find an opportunity to escape. These two fellows were not good people. No matter who it was, they were not people that Du Xiaofu could afford to provoke. Layers of Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit surged, and in the end, it flashed out from between his eyebrows. The huge red-bone horse-ape primordial spirit occupied the void, constantly roaring, and the surrounding flames would occasionally explode inch by inch. There was no need for him to hesitate as he charged straight at the flaming skeleton. Under the influence of the primordial spirit, the law of lightning was brazenly activated, and one after another, terrifying lightning after another struck towards the old man. At the same time, Du Xiaofu could also see that in the boundless sea of flames, there was a huge blood lotus blooming. It was probably no less than 100 feet in size, and it was incomparably huge. It also pressed down on the flaming skeleton old man. That was the true spirit of the blood flame divine lotus. If it was not for the old man, it should have been able to transform into its human form and become a demon spirit. At this moment, with Du Xiaofu's help, the blood flame divine lotus true spirit phantom erupted with terrifying flames and fiercely collided with the power of the skeletal old man. Space after space was burned into large amounts of ashes, and they fell one after another. Then, they were burned into spirals of green smoke, drifting into nothingness. After being suppressed by this old man for so many years, you still managed to preserve such a powerful strength. The skeletal old man shouted again and again, his voice filled with extreme anger. If it were not for the fact that he no longer had any flesh, his face would probably be quite ugly right now. He originally wanted to borrow Du Xiaofu's power to refine the blood flame divine lotus, but he never expected that the kid would instead work with the blood flame divine lotus to deal with him, resulting in such a difficult situation. Logically speaking, the old man had already predicted this situation. However, he never would have thought that after so many years of refinement, the blood flame divine lotus would finally hide in one place and express its greatest fear of him. Yet he didn't expect that it would still retain its absolutely terrifying strength. At this moment, with the eruption of terrifying strength and Du Xiaofu's assistance, the old man's situation could be said to be extremely dangerous. Old man, have a taste of death as well. Du Xiaofu's gigantic body of the red-boned stallion roared unceasingly, his roars shaking the heavens. The sea of flames churned unceasingly, the raging flames were like raging waves, terrifying to the extreme. Although he said this, Du Xiaofu was still paying attention to the changes in the field. Once there was an opportunity, he would not hesitate to rush back into his body and escape. On the other side, the huge blood flame divine lotus phantom did not release any mental fluctuations, only focusing on dealing with the flaming skeleton. Du Xiaofu knew that it should be able to speak the human language. Huff huff huff, boom boom boom, in the lava space, bursts of flames burned and collided, and bolts of lightning struck down, all of them aimed at the old man. However, the flaming skeleton had an extremely profound grasp of the laws of space, and most of the attacks were directed into nothingness. Only a small portion of the power struck his body, but it could not cause any effective damage. Even so, in such a two-sided pincer attack, he was still able to free himself to occasionally attack Du Xiaofu and the blood flame divine lotus. It had to be said that the strength of the old man and the blood flame divine lotus was very terrifying. At this moment, the two of them were almost evenly matched. If it were not for the blood flame divine lotus diverting most of the attacks, Du Xiaofu's red-bone horse monkey soul would have been burned to ashes by now. The three creatures were all attacking with all their strength. As long as one side fell, the balance here would be quickly broken. In the end, there should only be one person who could win. Time flew by quickly under such circumstances. Outside the lava space, He Jibai and the others were still guarding the spatial barrier. Young master, that person has been down there for a day. Could he have already? Beside He Jibai, a follower looked at him and asked. He did not finish his sentence, but the meaning he wanted to express was very clear. He was asking if the purple-robed young man had already died in there. This was because when that person had just entered the lava space yesterday to seize the blood flame divine lotus, a wave of fire had suddenly rushed out and drowned out the entire lava space. The seven of them were originally able to see everything clearly as they stood there, but now only endless flames filled the space, blocking their vision. The power of their souls was unable to pry into the lava space, so none of them knew what the purple-robed young man was facing. However, even though there was a spatial barrier between them, the seven of them could still sense the terrifying waves of energy coming from inside, which made them feel fearful for no reason. Therefore, it was not just one of them who had such a question. The others also wanted to know the specific situation. He shouldn't be. Although we can see that it's extremely dangerous from here, I keep feeling that that person is extremely extraordinary. He probably won't die so easily. Hijibai's face was as calm as an ancient well as he replied softly. The reason he had such a guess was not because he could see through all falsehoods, but because it was merely a guess. Chapter 2707. Hijibai had seen the purple-robed youth's strength and felt that he must have hidden a lot of his cultivation. Although the flames in the cave were overflowing and releasing a terrifying aura, Hijibai felt that the greater the commotion, the greater the chances of the purple-robed youth surviving. If the purple-robed youth was already dead, it would be impossible to cause such a huge commotion. As soon as he said this, the other seven people nodded in agreement. Everyone had long seen that the purple-robed youth's strength was definitely far above Hijibai's. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to deal with Dai Xuanzi so miserably. Moreover, he wouldn't have been the only one who could successfully break through the spatial barrier under everyone's feet. Young master, what should we do? Should we leave this place first? Hijibai's two subordinates looked at him and asked. In the origin space, this was far from the only place with hidden opportunities and benefits. The hundreds of thousands of people who entered had already scattered to various places to search for them. Right now, no matter what the outcome of the battle between the Bloodfire Divine Lotus and the purple-robed youth was, they wouldn't be able to obtain anything here. Rather than wasting time here, he might as well go somewhere else and search for it. Let's wait for a while longer. In any case, it's still a long time before the origin space closes. A few days won't make a difference. Dijibai thought for a moment and said. Hearing this, the two subordinates looked at each other in dismay. They couldn't figure out what their young master was thinking. However, with their status, it wasn't good for them to question anything. They only needed to obediently follow orders. Such a rare young expert, I really want to make friends with him. I hope nothing bad happens to him. No one said anything else. Only Hijibai sighed softly in his heart. He silently looked at the sea of flames below, but couldn't see anything. There was only boundless flames jumping about. Within it, the battle between Du Xiaofu, the flaming skeleton, and the bloodfire divine lotus was still ongoing. However, with the passage of time, the situation between them had undergone a great change. The flaming skeleton, which was originally able to handle the pincer attacks of Du Xiaofu and the blood flame divine lotus with ease, now seemed to be unable to hold on. Over the years, in order to refine the blood flame divine lotus, both of them had consumed too much of their energy. They were in a delicate balance, and neither of them could do anything to the other in a short period of time. It was precisely because of this that now the flaming skeleton wanted to kill Du Xiaofu and borrow his strength to deal with the blood flame divine lotus. Even if it was very weak compared to them, didn't expect it was enough that under their joint efforts between the two, he was gradually unable to hold on. Bolts of lightning rained down, coupled with the crushing pressure of the blood flame divine lotus, and a monstrous force surged forth. The flaming skeleton was on the verge of breaking apart, and it emitted creaking noises. Stinking brat, you've tricked this old man. At this time, the flaming skeleton finally felt danger and couldn't help but cry out. He felt the threat of death and knew that it would be very difficult for him to walk out of this lava space alive today. You old thing, you wanted to kill me as soon as I came in, and you have the nerve to say that I tricked you? Du Xiaofu snorted coldly. The majestic scarlet bone horse monkey raised his hand and shot out another bolt of lightning, fiercely smashing into the flaming skeleton. He did not show any mercy in his attacks. The other party had always wanted to kill him, so he was his enemy. This old man had no choice. Otherwise, a good seedling like you would have to be my disciple no matter what. If it wasn't for the fact that I had no choice, this old man wouldn't have chosen to kill you. The old man sighed as he spoke. His hoarse voice sounded somewhat terrifying. Bah! Du Xiaofu spat and reprimanded. If you had asked for my help from the beginning, I might not have refused. But you wanted to take my life from the beginning, is this what you mean by having no choice? The scarlet bone horse monkey clenched his teeth, his voice filled with hatred. Just as he had said, if the old man had asked him to lend a hand when he first entered this place, he might not have refused. He had just come to the 33 heavens, so if he could make friends with some powerhouses, it would be of great benefit to him. At most, while helping him, he would ask for an exorbitant price and take the opportunity to extort some benefits from him. That's all. Needless to say, after adding his own power, the blood flame divine lotus would definitely not be the old man's match. It would be much easier for it to be refined in the end. However, it was too late to say anything now. Du Xiaofu had no intention of stopping at all. At the very least, before an opportunity to escape appeared, he would not hesitate at all. What does a little brat like you know? The flaming skeleton old man was somewhat angry and snorted at Du Xiaofu. This old man is only one step away from refining the blood flame divine lotus. His body has already been completely fused with by me, only the power of his true spirit remains. This is also why you only saw the blood flame divine lotus when you came in and didn't see my true body. If I were to ask you to help me deal with the blood flame divine lotus's true body, that would be the same as dealing with me. Only by borrowing your power and entering my soul can I cause damage to its true spirit, allowing me to completely obliterate it. Du Xiaofu heard the old man's words and immediately understood the meaning behind them. The old man had already refined the blood flame divine lotus's true body and fused it with his own. The blood flame divine lotus only had a wisp of its true spirit left, struggling to resist. If it succeeded in resisting, then both its true body and the old man's body would belong to it. And the reason the flaming skeleton didn't ask Du Xiaofu to help was because there really wasn't much he could do to help. In the battle between the two, All that was left was the final struggle between the Yuan spirit and true spirit, and this was being carried out within the old man's true body. If Du Xiaofu harbored ill intentions and took advantage of the moment when both sides were injured to make a move, the blood flame divine lotus and the old man himself would be consigned to eternal damnation. Perhaps this was still a gamble for the blood flame divine lotus, but to the old man he was gambling with his life. This was not a good deal, so it was better to just kill him. The old man's greatest miscalculation was that the blood flame divine lotus still retained a great deal of power. Moreover, it had truly joined forces with the purple-robed young man, causing everything to go out of his control. "Old bastard, nothing you say can change the outcome today," Du Xiaofu roared out. The scarlet horse monkey's soul erupted with resplendent golden light, causing the flames to surge. Under his control, continuous thunderbolts kept appearing out of thin air, intertwining with each other and crisscrossing to weave a huge net of light, which covered the flaming skeleton and kept bombarding it. At the same time, the illusory blood flame divine lotus on the other side also emitted a monstrous might. It carried a might that could crush everything as it spat out an incomparably ferocious fiery light that ferociously charged towards the skeletal old man. Arg! Very soon, the skeletal old man shrieked out miserably as he endured tremendous pain. His strength had already reached its limit. Coupled with the blood flame divine lotus and Du Xiaofu working together, he had depleted far, far too much of his strength. At this moment, he was finally close to being unable to hold on any longer. Under the combined attacks of the two of them, he gradually became unable to hold on. He was about to collapse. Is there still no chance to escape? Du Xiaofu used the laws of lightning to attack as he used the power of his soul to scout the surroundings. He wanted to find an opportunity to escape. However, to his disappointment, the surrounding space was still the same as before. It was unshakable. He had originally thought that after the old man had expended so much of his strength, he would not have any more power to pin him down here. However, he had never thought that after the old man reached the end of his tether, the blood flame divine lotus would gradually take control of his body. After fusing with the old man's body, it still possessed extremely terrifying strength. It did not give Du Xiaofu any opportunity to take advantage of it. Du Xiaofu's heart could not help but gradually sink when he saw this. Blood flame divine lotus, you've already gained the upper hand. It's no longer difficult to kill this old thing. It's only a matter of time. Since that's the case, why don't you let me leave right now? I don't want to get too deeply involved in your enmity. Du Xiaofu suddenly stopped, and the lightning that filled the sky abruptly withdrew. The red-bone horse monkey's soul turned to look at the huge figure of the blood-red lotus in the sky. However, the blood flame divine lotus did not give a response. It continued to focus on dealing with the flaming skeleton, suppressing it to the point where it was unable to turn the situation around. It was easy to imagine that it wouldn't be long before the skeletal old man would definitely die. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's only thought was to leave this place as soon as possible. Otherwise, when the blood flame divine lotus won in the end, if it did not care about his kindness and instead wanted to kill him to recover some of its strength, the situation would be extremely bad. In the boundless sea of fire, the old man let out a blood-curdling scream again. His aura gradually weakened. Although he would not die just like that, under the suppression of the blood flame divine lotus, defeat was only a matter of time. Brat, once this old man dies, the blood flame divine lotus will not let you off. This old man has suppressed it for tens of thousands of years, causing it to be extremely weak. It is now time for it to be greatly nourished. Once it is free, the first thing it will do is kill you. You have to know that the strongest fire attribute laws are able to refine all matter in the world, turning it into the purest energy and then absorbing it for use. And your cultivation is also quite good, so you are an absolute tonic for it. The skeletal old man shouted anxiously. Then, as if he had thought something through, he let out a long sigh, then gritted his teeth and said, "You brat, you might be the nemesis of this old man's life. Meeting you is truly the misfortune of 8 lifetimes. Not only did you not help this old man, but you also caused me to fall into such a dead end. Forget it. Forget it. No matter what, I can't let this blood flame divine lotus take advantage of me. Anyway, you can see that the blood flame divine lotus will not let you go. If you believe this old man, then let me help you refine it. Hearing the old man's words, Du Xiaofu's scarlet horse monkey primordial spirit's face could not help but be moved. Although he did not dare to believe this skeletal old man, it would be a lie to say that he did not have any intention of doing so. The blood flame divine lotus was a spiritual object of heaven and earth born in a place of extreme yang, and it carried the strongest fire attribute laws. In particular, the blood flame divine lotus was even more extraordinary. It could be seen from the strength displayed by the old man. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to fight against him for tens of thousands of years without being completely destroyed. After gaining control of the heavenly ways in Shenwu world, Du Xiaofu gradually realized that there were many different types of laws in this world. As for himself, he had only mastered a few of them. The lightning attribute laws and the space attribute laws were his strongest techniques. At most, he could add in a few other ultimacies. But within the 33 heavens, profound meaning level methods weren't something that could be used. Previously, when he was being chased by that old dog from the house of Zongheng, Du Xiaofu realized that his techniques were not enough. All the techniques that had been successful in the past were not enough. He urgently needed to understand the direction of his cultivation, and at the same time, obtain more techniques to fight against his enemies. This is tempting me. Right now, an opportunity was right in front of him, but he was hesitating. If this skeletal old man was sincere in helping him, then he really would have a chance to completely refine the blood flame divine lotus. When that happens, he would gain another powerful technique, and his strength would increase greatly. The only thing he could not be sure of was whether or not this old man would trick him at a critical moment and put him in a situation of no return. If that was the case, then the result would not be good at all. Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit silently sat in the void. His pupils turned as he looked at the scene before him. The huge blood flame divine lotus continued to spit out terrifying flames that submerged the old man's skeleton. The vast aura was like an abyss, suppressing the old man to the point that he didn't have much strength to retaliate. "Young man, what are you hesitating for?" Just as Du Xiaofu was thinking, the skeletal old man spoke again. He said somewhat hurriedly, "If you continue to hesitate, then I will be burned to death by the blood flame divine lotus. At this time, you still don't trust me? If you wait any longer, even if you think it through, I won't have the strength to help you deal with the blood flame divine lotus. If you suspect that I have ulterior motives, then you don't have to. I don't have any more strength to refine it. After we join forces to suppress it, I'm afraid that the blood flame divine lotus and I will be at your mercy. The world is unpredictable. I have worked hard for tens of thousands of years, but in the end, I still have to help you, stinking brat. Even so, you are still hesitating. You don't trust me." Chapter 2708. Stinking brat, if you don't say anything, this old man won't care anymore. At worst, we'll both die. This old man has indeed suffered a great loss, but you'll be buried with me. The skeletal old man sensed that Du Xiaofu had not made a move and was truly anxious. If that brat knew what was good for him, the two of them would still have a chance to live. But who would have thought that he would not believe his words at all? Even though he was very tempted by the huge temptation, he was still very cautious. "That's right, who told me to attack him the moment he entered this lava space, intending to kill him?" If it were anyone else who had encountered such a thing, they would not easily believe him. Thinking of this, the two rows of teeth on the old man's skull that was submerged in the sea of fire cracked open, as if he was smiling bitterly. "Fine. I'll believe you this time." After a long period of careful consideration, Du Xiaofu finally made up his mind and made a huge decision. The red-bone horse monkey that was entrenched in the void also nodded its huge head forcefully. It was not that Du Xiaofu was certain of this skeletal old man's character, but he just wanted to take a gamble. Most importantly, after the blood flame divine lotus gained the upper hand, it was obvious that it would not let him leave. Rather than wasting time here and waiting to be killed and refined by the other party, He might as well believe this skeletal old man this time and take the initiative to attack. If he really did want to help him, then he would have profited greatly in the end. Men die for wealth and birds die for food. Faced with such a huge temptation, how could Du Xiaofu not be tempted? Anyway, he could not escape. If he took a gamble, he might be able to obtain unexpected benefits. At least you're a little smart, the skeletal old man said happily. Now, whether or not he could keep his life depended on how this brat was going to do. Old man, don't talk nonsense, tell me what to do, Du Xiaofu said without the slightest trace of politeness. He opened his mouth and closed it with the word, old fart, causing the skeletal old man to be speechless. After a while, he said, I will use the law of space to break open a gap. When the time comes, you just have to attack with all your strength and send your attacks into it. Leave the rest to me. Remember, success or failure depends on you. Don't hide it anymore, otherwise, both of us will die in the end. After the blood flame divine lotus true spirit is severely damaged, I will tell you what to do next. There's no time to lose. If you're ready, let's begin immediately. Without waiting for Du Xiaofu's consent, the old man immediately displayed the power of the law of space. In Du Xiaofu's eyes, he saw a pitch-black spatial crack suddenly appear in the midst of the fiery and violent flames. It was like the huge mouth of the Demon King, extending all the way to Du Xiaofu. A strange aura was emitted from this spatial crack. It was indescribably mysterious. Du Xiaofu used the power of his origin spirit to investigate, but he could not see the true meaning behind it. He did not know what kind of mysteries were hidden inside. However, he did not think too much about it. The red-bone horse monkey's origin spirit retreated and instantly returned to his physical body. Around him, the omnipresent pressure was greatly reduced and was no longer as strong as before. Du Xiaofu also regained his ability to move. He knew that this was the old man's method. Sacred sword roar. The purple-gold heavenly tower appeared in Du Xiaofu's hand. He did not hesitate at all and directly slashed out with his sword. Endless energy surged and surged in the fiery space. The runes that filled the sky swept out and finally gathered in one place, turning into an incomparably terrifying sword light. It let out an earth-shaking roar, like a surging river, and brazenly charged into the spatial crack. In the space in front of Du Xiaofu, another huge spatial crack was slashed open. However, what shocked him was that the spatial crack that the skeletal old man used only shook twice under his fierce and domineering sword attack. It did not suffer much impact at all and still appeared there impressively. This was too unbelievable. Under normal circumstances, how could Du Xiaofu's attack not even shake a spatial crack? However, the reality had really happened, causing him to be extremely shocked. It could only be said that the spatial laws that this old man grasped were countless times more profound than Du Xiaofu's. Sword breaking 10,000 miles. Although Du Xiaofu was shocked, he did not think too much about it. He turned his hand and slashed out with his sword again. The resplendent sword light was like a divine sword that could split the heavens, outstanding in the world. The two consecutive sword lights entered the spatial crack almost at the same time. They were like oxen entering a quagmire and did not cause much of a commotion. Du Xiaofu was puzzled, completely unaware of the skeletal old man's intentions. However, before his doubts could deepen, he saw an extremely strange scene. In the distance, in front of the blood flame divine lotus phantom, the space suddenly burst open and a huge gap was torn open. After that, two violent rays of light shot out from the blood flame divine lotus one after the other, and they slashed directly at the blood flame divine lotus's phantom, causing it to have no time to dodge at all. What a domineering method! Du Xiaofu trembled all over and almost lost his mind. The skeletal old man's methods were too shocking. The application of spatial law actually reached such a wondrous pinnacle level. When Du Xiaofu fought with him before, the old man had already displayed extremely mysterious methods, leading Du Xiaofu's attacks to unknown places one by one. At this time, he actually used that incomparably mysterious method to completely ignore the barrier of space and let Du Xiaofu's attack directly affect the phantom of the blood flame divine lotus. This kind of domineering and mystical divine ability was too shocking. Du Xiaofu thought about it and felt that it seemed to be somewhat similar to his first form Rising Sunday. The difference between the two was that the first form Rising Sun required one's body to pass through space in order to create an unexpected effect. The skeletal old man's methods were 100 times more mysterious. Just imagine, a person with such an ability could directly launch an attack into the void crack, and then control that attack and place it anywhere at will. No matter who faced such an unpredictable attack, they would be caught off guard. No one would be able to predict when and where it would land on them. When facing such an opponent, the pressure in one's heart could be imagined. As expected of the old man, his methods are really heaven-defying. Du Xiaofu sighed and thought in his heart that when he should properly study this method. As long as he could get out of this predicament, regardless of whether he could obtain the blood flame divine lotus or not, the harvest would be huge. Some of the things that the skeletal old man had shown were enough for him to comprehend for a long time. "Brat, what the fuck are you in a daze for?" The skeletal old man's dissatisfied shout came from afar, pulling Du Xiaofu back to reality. He straightened his expression and shouted, raising his sword and slashing, "Heaven and earth are empty." Chi-La, the sword light that penetrated the heavens, shook the universe and attacked the spatial crack in front of him. Du Xiaofu could already tell that his ferocious attacks had been processed by the skeletal old man, so they could be directly used on the blood flame divine lotus true spirit and avoid causing too much damage to the old man. Otherwise, with his current weak state, if he was ruthlessly slashed by Du Xiaofu, he would have to suffer a lot. Buzz, humph. When the sword light struck the blood flame divine lotus, it emitted a buzzing sound, accompanied by a muffled groan from the skeletal old man. Even though it had been processed, Du Xiaofu's attack still caused him a lot of damage, causing his aura to become even more dispirited. This was also the reason why the skeletal old man wanted to kill Du Xiaofu from the beginning and not let him help him. However, in comparison, the shadow of the blood flame divine lotus was much dimmer. After all, most of the power had struck its body. And it was precisely because of this that the blood flame divine lotus was furious. After trembling for a while, it suddenly erupted with an even more terrifying power, brazenly suppressing the skeletal old man. "Brat, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and attack with all your might. What about the law of thunder? Why aren't you using it?" The skeletal old man hurriedly shouted, resisting the boundless pressure. "Hegemonic sword way. Heavenly thunder punishment. 8 desolation thunder. God-binding grip." Du Xiaofu also knew that the situation was critical, and a series of attacks were launched. The sword light was mixed with thunder and brought along a terrifying spatial storm. It swept through the air as if it was about to destroy the world, continuously rushing into the void crack. After these attacks were launched, they appeared around the blood flame divine lotus one after another. All of them hit its body, and not a single one was dodged. Chi, the shadow of the blood flame divine lotus, trembled violently, and the light it emitted gradually dimmed. Its aura was weakening, and the power it displayed was also decreasing. "I really have a chance to refine it." Du Xiaofu was pleasantly surprised, and his attacks did not stop. Heavenly thunder absolute destruction. Heavenly fire dual person destruction. Earth swamp Lu hexagram destruction. Earth fire bright destruction. In the end, Du Xiaofu even summoned the Void 8 trigrams. The Void 8 trigrams that had been supported by the Thunder Martial Vein were brilliant and terrifying. Every time it hit the shadow of the blood flame divine lotus, it would shake incessantly, as if it was about to collapse. The more Du Xiaofu fought, the more excited he became. The aura of the blood flame divine lotus was getting weaker and weaker, which meant that the chances of refining it were greater. "Boy, I can't hold on any longer. Seize the opportunity to refine the true spirit of the blood flame divine lotus, quick. Don't delay. If you delay too long and he recovers a little bit of his strength, there will be no turning back." The skeletal old man's voice was extremely weak, as if he was struggling at death's door. In fact, when he controlled Du Xiaofu to attack, the old man himself had also suffered significant injuries. Earlier, he had been severely injured by the joint attack of Du Xiaofu and the blood flame Divine Lotus. Now that he had been attacked again and again, his injuries were even more serious. He really did not have the strength to deal with the blood flame Divine Lotus, so he could only rely on the boy. But Du Xiaofu agreed, and his figure suddenly moved, pouncing straight at the shadow of the blood flame Divine Lotus. In the process of moving forward, the red-bone horse monkey's primordial spirit rushed out of his body and directly disintegrated, turning into a large area of throbbing lightning that wrapped around the true spirit of the blood flame Divine Lotus. Human, if you dare refine me, I will make sure you die a horrible death. At this time, the blood flame Divine Lotus finally opened its mouth to speak, letting out a sharp shriek. A powerful force fluctuated, constantly struggling, trying to break free from the restraints of Du Xiaofu's thunder force. I helped you deal with that old man out of kindness, but you didn't want to let me go. You even wanted to use the fire attribute law to refine me into the purest energy. You really deserve to die 10,000 times. Du Xiaofu said, responding to the true spirit of the blood flame Divine Lotus, you asked for it. If you let me go, the winner would have been you. Unfortunately, you missed the opportunity. Don't expect me to be merciful. Du Xiaofu snorted coldly, and the power of his primordial spirit moved fiercely, carrying with it a domineering force. In the surging sea of lightning, the primordial spirit of the blood flame Divine Lotus emitted a dazzling light, condensing into a huge net of light that tightly imprisoned the true spirit of the blood flame Divine Lotus. At this point, although the remaining power of the blood flame Divine Lotus was still extremely vast, it could no longer compare to Du Xiaofu. It was firmly suppressed, and it was completely unable to put up any effective resistance. But, human, I will kill you. The blood flame Divine Lotus roared again and again, its sharp voice piercing the eardrums, stunning those who heard it. It struggled with all its might, but it was all in vain. Slowly, streaks of lightning like tiny snakes burrowed into the huge shadow of the blood flame Divine Lotus. This scene looked like Du Xiaofu's lightning martial vein taking root in a blood flame Divine Lotus. It was incomparably bizarre. After that, the blood flame Divine Lotus's struggle quickly weakened, and it had even less strength to contend with Du Xiaofu. You'd better be honest. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for repaying kindness with ingratitude. You deserve to be struck by lightning. Du Xiaofu snorted coldly as he controlled balls of lightning, constantly stabbing them into the shadow of the blood flame Divine Lotus, and finally occupying it completely. As time passed, the blood flame Divine Lotus finally quieted down, completely losing the power to resist. The shadow was completely filled with Du Xiaofu's power of lightning. Moreover, during this process, Du Xiaofu did not expend much strength. Even when he suppressed the blood flame Divine Lotus true spirit, he still retained a lot of strength. Begin refining. Du Xiaofu suppressed the excitement in his heart and prepared to refine the blood flame Divine Lotus true spirit. But at the same time, he also kept an eye out to guard against the skeletal old man's tricks. The temptation of the blood flame Divine Lotus was huge. If he was ambushed at a critical moment, he would fall all the way to his grandmother's house. However, Du Xiaofu was not too worried. The skeletal old man's weakness did not seem to be faked. In the process of fighting with the blood flame Divine Lotus, although he had put in a lot of effort, he had mainly relied on the old man to fight to that extent. In this way, Du Xiaofu could relax a little and wholeheartedly refine the blood flame Divine Lotus. Chapter 2709. In the lava space, Du Xiaofu controlled the power of lightning and pulled the true spirit of the bloodfire Divine Lotus into his body. Then, he sat cross-legged in the air and entered a mysterious state, beginning to refine it with all his might. The surroundings were still filled with endless fire, and every inch of space was unbearably hot. The skeletal old man's breath was weak, and he was almost at his last gasp. He did not disturb Du Xiaofu. The light on the skeleton dimmed, and he sat cross-legged in the air, meditating to recover his strength. His physical body had suffered great injuries, and the power of his soul was close to withering. If he continued to struggle, he might die at any time. The lava space fell into silence, and there were no more battles. If not for the fact that Du Xiaofu needed to refine the true spirit of the Bloodfire Divine Lotus, he would probably be very happy to raise the purple gold heavenly tower and give the skeletal old man a blow to prevent future trouble. Time gradually passed under such circumstances, constantly passing by. Outside the cave, He Jibai and the others had already waited for almost 2 days, but they still had not left. Young master, this restriction seems to have weakened quite a bit. Should we go down and take a look? Beside He Jibai, one of his subordinates suddenly spoke with joy. In fact, it was not just him. The others had also discovered this. They all discovered that the spatial barrier that had blocked their footsteps and isolated their Yuan spirit's power was rippling at this moment. Under the probing of their soul power, it actually no longer had the effect of blocking probing. This made them overjoyed. Everyone who came here wanted to obtain an opportunity, and the temptation of the Bloodfire Divine Lotus could not be said to be small. However, they also knew very well that the purple-robed young man had already gone down, and this change was definitely related to him. They just did not know what kind of state that person was in right now. If we go down now, we might have a chance to snatch the opportunity from him. Among the other 4, one of them flushed red, seeming rather excited. That purple-robed young man is not to be trifled with. If he's fine, won't we be asking for trouble if we go down? However, from the brilliance in his eyes, it could be seen that he was very tempted as well. Opportunities are always accompanied by dangers. In the face of benefits, there seems to be no reason for us to retreat. Another person spoke up, rubbing his palms together. The 4 of them could not suppress their excitement. Their bodies slowly descended and they began to gather their strength. They wanted to break the barrier beneath their feet and enter the cave. However, just as they were about to move, He Jibai's voice was heard. "Let's wait here. I'm afraid it won't be long before he comes out. The way I see it, that blood flame divine lotus is extraordinary. It's not an ordinary object. It's very likely that it has cultivated for countless years and is peerlessly powerful. Now that he had obtained it, he should be able to obtain great benefits. When the time comes, I'll also have a good look. Divine General Zihong's mansion would like to get to know such an outstanding young man." He Jibai chuckled. His words were not only for his 2 followers, but also for the other 4 powerhouses to hear. Among those present, he was the most powerful. To a certain extent, his will could determine the actions of others. In fact, He Jibai wanted to make friends with Du Xiaofu and did not want others to disturb him. Therefore, he was willing to play the role of a guardian and do something for the purple-robed young man. As expected, once he said that, the other 4 people's faces changed. They tried their best to hide their excitement and did not dare to act rashly. He had even used the name of Divine General Zihong's mansion. His intention was obvious. He wanted to intimidate everyone present. "Since young master he has said so, we'll wait here," one of the 4 said with a hollow laugh as he took a few steps back. They had all heard of Divine General Zihong's mansion. It was comparable to Dai Xuanzi's Great Void Divine General's mansion. In the entire Yuqing Holy Kingdom, both of them were colossal existences. They were extremely powerful. Although the 4 of them had their own backgrounds, they did not have the guts to challenge the top forces of the Holy Kingdom. They were not qualified to do so. Just like that, although the space barrier above the cave entrance had weakened a lot, under He Jibai's watch, no one dared to cross the barrier and enter the cave. The 7 of them waited quietly. At the same time, they stared at the changes below without blinking. They even unleashed the power of their respective primordial spirits to investigate the situation inside. However, under the obstruction of the endless flames, they could not pry into Du Xiaofu's specific situation. Huff, huff, huff. Du Xiaofu, who was sitting with his eyes closed, suddenly burst into a blazing flame and burned fiercely. At this moment, such a flame did not cause him any harm. Instead, it added to his power. In his mind, the blood flame divine lotus true spirit was constantly being refined. The blood-red lotus phantom exuded a strange pattern, like the winding veins of a plant. Du Xiaofu gained a lot of understanding from the most profound pattern. This understanding was something he had never had before. To spiritual beings of heaven and earth, they were born with some kind of dharma and logos of the vast thousand worlds. This was especially so for existences like the bloody lotus, which interpreted the most perfect and profound dharma. Many years ago, Du Xiaofu had continuously comprehended runes from Du Xiaoyao. From there, he cultivated the primordial spirit of the red-bone horse monkey and obtained the uniqueness of the red-bone horse monkey. Now, with the help of the bloody lotus real spirit, he quickly grasped some dharma of the fire element. This made him very happy. The great Tao is boundless, and all dharma returns to its origin. All the dharma of heaven and earth have their own paths. At the same time, there is a certain connection between them. They cannot exist independently. As Du Xiaofu comprehended, he kept thinking in his heart. After gaining control of the heavenly Tao, he had a deeper understanding of the vast thousand worlds. At this time, he comprehended some dharma of the fire element, which allowed him to see a wider world. However, there were still some questions that puzzled him and he could not understand them. Chi, bright flames jumped around Du Xiaofu's body, making him look like a fierce flaming man, exuding a terrifying temperature. The heavenly thunder can trigger the earthly fire. The lightning element can trigger the power of the divine fire. Du Xiaofu was deep in thought. With a thought, a huge thunderbolt appeared out of thin air and bombarded the void. Immediately after, a flame suddenly jumped up from the place where the thunderbolt struck. This was the power of the fire element triggered by the heavenly thunder. If the lightning element and the fire element are used together, won't the power be even more terrifying? Du Xiaofu continued to think. In the sky above his head, bolts of divine thunder were entrenched and crackling, carrying with them the power to destroy the world. In the next moment, under the situation where the heavenly thunder did not strike, a ball of bright fire was ignited under his feet. It spread out in the void and burned fiercely. The lightning element and the divine fire complemented each other, releasing an extremely terrifying aura. Under Du Xiaofu's control, the heavenly thunder and the earthly fire moved at the same time. Two tiny strands of power gently swept out and struck the void not far away. Crack! Under the combined attack of the lightning element and the fire element, the void suddenly cracked and there was a burnt smell. Du Xiaofu had already opened his eyes. When he saw this scene, he could not help but be shocked. Under his control, the lightning element and the fire element were very weak, but he did not expect them to have such a huge effect. This discovery made him extremely excited. Why does it have such great power? Du Xiaofu was very confused. He wanted to know the specific reason, but he could not figure it out. When he was in the Shenwu world, he was already the strongest person in the world. He did not know anything about the path of cultivation after that. When he just arrived at the 33 skies, he did not have the time to learn more before he was chased here by the house of vertical and horizontal. He was also separated from the tomboy, Du Xiaoyao, and the three little ones. The heavenly thunder, the earthly fire. What if I try this? Du Xiaofu thought for a while. Suddenly, his face was full of excitement as a magical idea popped into his mind. As soon as he thought of it, he softly shouted, "Void 8 trigrams, rise." Whoosh! The moment he spoke, a gigantic 8 trigrams appeared above Du Xiaofu's head. A wave of terrifying pressure suddenly descended and filled up every inch of space. Below this 8 trigrams, bolts of lightning appeared and rampaged. The terrifying roar of thunder shook the area and displayed a terrifying might. It was like the roar of a demon. Under Du Xiaofu's feet, flames rose and burned. It was like the fire of hell that could burn everything in the world. In the next moment, a fierce wind howled and howled in all directions, causing the entire space to tremble. In addition, mountains and rivers appeared out of thin air, as if they could suppress everything in the world. They emitted a heavy aura and lay dormant under Du Xiaofu's feet. At the same time, the sound of waves echoed. A lake and sea appeared, and the waves moved the sky. Heaven, earth, thunder, wind, water, fire, mountain, lake. So the void 8 trigrams hid so many transformations of laws. In the past, I only thought of it as a kind of divine ability, but I never studied the Tao of transformations within it too deeply. It's as if everything in the world is played out in the void 8 trigrams. Du Xiaofu could not help but shout. He felt quite shocked. The void 8 trigrams was something he comprehended in the divine dominion. It was a technique left behind by the ruler of the 3,000 worlds. In the past, Du Xiaofu relied on it to fight countless powerful enemies. Although he had been constantly comprehending the essence of it, he had never looked at it from an outside perspective. He had fallen into some kind of shackle. At this moment, after the inspiration of the heavenly thunder and earth fire surged, Du Xiaofu felt as if he had been enlightened. Qian, Han, Sun, Zhen, Qin, Li, Zhen, and Jing respectively represented the principles of the profundities of heaven, earth, lightning, wind, water, fire, mountain, and lake. All the changes in the world seemed to be completely explained within this diagram, and it was extremely miraculous. And as long as one mastered the most basic principle, one could trigger the other true meanings and condense them into a terrifying attack. Du Xiaofu could not help but sigh. The means of the ruler of the 3,000 worlds was far from what he could imagine. The strongest part of the void 8 trigrams is its endless transformations. Any combination of different forces can form the most terrifying attack. If I can fully comprehend all the principles contained in it, then when I use the void 8 trigrams, how powerful will it be? Thinking of this, Du Xiaofu couldn't hold it in any longer, and a sense of urgency rose in his heart. Just thinking about it made him feel excited and wanted to give it a try. However, he only had a certain level of attainment in the law of thunder and fire. He was confused in other aspects and was far from being able to try according to his idea. It seems that the law of space is not included in the void 8 trigrams? Du Xiaofu frowned slightly and thought to himself. Among the many true meanings of the void 8 trigrams, there did not seem to be any law of space. They were all laws of substance. However, as soon as this thought arose, it was dismissed by Du Xiaofu. He shook his head and muttered to himself, "Heaven and earth, which is heaven and earth. Doesn't it represent the most fundamental and vast power of space?" Du Xiaofu understood this point in his heart, but he had a feeling of helplessness. Heaven and earth, were too vast and mighty. The law of space that he had mastered was not enough. It was impossible for him to comprehend the deepest true meaning. Forget it. I'll slowly comprehend the void 8 trigrams in the future. It would be best if I could deduce some of my own methods. Du Xiaofu no longer thought about it, but he secretly made up his mind to comprehend more of the profound truths of the void 8 trigrams. In the 33 heavens, many of the martial skills he had learned before were extremely backward. When facing enemies, it was easy for him to fall into a passive situation when facing opponents of the same level. After grasping some of the law of fire, Du Xiaofu decided to deduce his own methods. The foundation for all of this was to slowly evolve from the various methods he had learned in the past. Refining the blood flame divine lotus is almost complete. Du Xiaofu's eyes flickered as he thought to himself. In his mind's Niwen palace, the blood flame divine lotus true spirit was completely under his control, and he could use the true meaning of the laws engraved on it. At the same time, on the law brand in his mind, other than the part that explained the law of lightning and the law of space, more lines lit up. They represented the law of fire, but like the law of space, they were far from being complete. It could be said that Du Xiaofu could borrow the strength of the blood flame divine lotus true spirit to mobilize the profound laws of fire, but he was still far from being able to grasp the complete laws of fire. How is that old thing doing? Du Xiaofu let out a long sigh and then walked around, passing through the flames that filled the sky. Soon, he arrived at the flaming skeleton's side. At this time, the skeletal old man was still sitting cross-legged in the void, constantly adjusting his breathing as he tried to restore some of his strength. This old fellow must have been a heaven-defying powerhouse in the past, but now, the corners of Du Xiaofu's mouth curled up into a sinister smile. Looking at the skeleton, his eyes revealed a malicious glint. Being stared at like this, the flaming skeleton couldn't help but shudder as if it was shuddering. "Stinking brat, what are you doing?" The skeletal old man slowly woke up. His hollow eye sockets immediately stared at Du Xiaofu as he asked in a threatening manner. He felt a chill run down his spine. This was the funniest thing in the world. As a fire attribute master, he actually felt cold. The old man knew that the root of all this was the purple-robe youth. Perhaps this purple-robe youth was plotting some evil scheme. Old thing, what goes around comes around. You're going to fall into my hands now, aren't you? Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows and smiled at the flaming skeleton, feeling indescribably carefree. Boy, what the hell are you smiling about? The old man cursed, his skeletal jaw opening and closing. It was an indescribably strange sight. Old thing, it was you who wanted to kill me before. Now it's my turn. However, I'm a benevolent person, so I won't kill you. As long as you hand over the main body of the blood flame divine lotus and let me beat you up, I'll be satisfied and leave here. Du Xiaofu said with a smile as he approached the skeletal old man step by step. He had refined the blood flame divine lotus true spirit, so it was equivalent to a cultivator's soul. As for the main body of the blood flame divine lotus, it had already been refined by the skeletal old man. Du Xiaofu didn't want to let go of such a great benefit. If he could obtain the main body of the blood flame divine lotus, he would have one more method at his disposal. Stinking brat, you're still trying to act innocent after taking advantage of me? If it weren't for the fact that I'm in urgent need of recovery and don't have time to waste with you, I would have directly slapped you. Now get the hell out of here, or don't blame me for being impolite. The old man immediately cursed. He pointed a bony claw that had lost its flesh above his head, indicating that Du Xiaofu should leave quickly. At the same time, a burst of dazzling flames rose from his skeleton, leaping and releasing a terrifying power, causing the temperature in the space to rise by another level. He was furious. This brat was not satisfied with obtaining the blood flame divine lotus true spirit. He actually had the idea of snatching the main body of the blood flame divine lotus from his hands. That wasn't all. He actually said that he wanted to give him a good beating. That was intolerable. You're still bluffing with me at this time. Do you think I'm scared? If you have the ability, then slap me to death. If you don't have the ability, then obediently hand over the main body of the blood flame divine lotus today. Otherwise, don't blame me for tearing down your bones one by one and using them as firewood. Du Xiaofu couldn't stop laughing. He didn't stop moving forward because of the old man's threat. As he walked, he soon arrived in front of the old man. Chapter 2710. Translator. H2H2 Mr. Du Xiaofu was not afraid of the skeletal old man. Perhaps when he had first entered this place, he was indeed no match for the old man and could only passively take a beating. But now, after fighting with the Bloodfire Lotus, the old man's strength had been weakened to the extreme. He believed that as long as he attacked with all his strength, this skeleton would not have much power to resist and could only be trampled on by him. Thinking of this, Du Xiaofu felt an indescribable joy in his heart. On one hand, he had a chance to obtain the Bloodfire Lotus main body. On the other hand, he could beat this old man up and avenge his previous hatred. Why wouldn't he do such a good thing? Fuck you. Fourth uncle and granny. How dare you speak to an old man like this? Brat, you don't know how the word death is written, do you? The skeletal old man continued to curse. He was indeed bluffing. Otherwise, how could he allow this brat to jump around so impudently in front of him? He wanted nothing more than to jump up and pick up this detestable brat in front of him to give him a good beating. Unfortunately, this purple-robed brat had guessed correctly. His strength had been weakened to the extreme. It was difficult for him to even move vigorously, let alone fight. The old man could only pretend to be furious in an attempt to scare Du Xiaofu. Unexpectedly, the other party did not fall for his trick at all and was determined to obtain the Bloodfire Lotus main body. At this moment, the skeletal old man was worried. He did not know what to do at all. You still dare to scold me at a time like this? Looks like you really don't want these old bones anymore. Du Xiaofu grinned and raised a palm. Purple gold light lingered on it as he slammed it down viciously at the flaming skeleton. He was not afraid that this fellow would be killed by him in an instant. This old man's life was very tough. He had been here for tens of thousands of years and still had not died. He definitely had some tricks up his sleeve to deal with this attack. When Du Xiaofu's palm slammed down, it turned into a resplendent palm of light. It slammed down with the power to crush everything and ruthlessly imprinted itself on the skeletal old man's body, turning him into ashes in an instant. However, Du Xiaofu knew that this attack had missed. It did not hit the skeletal old man. The other party was a powerhouse who had a very deep grasp of the law of space. He wouldn't be hit so easily. You are indeed a cunning old fox. You said that you wanted to kill me before, but now you are running faster than a fox. Du Xiaofu curled his lips and mocked. In his eyes, the skeletal figure of the old man appeared in the distance. His empty eye sockets were fiercely staring at him, spewing out raging flames of anger. But very quickly, the flame was extinguished and was helplessly restrained by the old man. Kid, how about we talk about the conditions? Seeing Du Xiaofu approach again, the old man waved his hand and hurriedly said, You've already become like this, what other conditions do you have to exchange with me? Du Xiaofu did not stop. He looked around and said, After being here for tens of thousands of years, your Qingquan bag must have been burned to ashes long ago. You don't have any treasures left. What other treasures can you take out to negotiate with me? If you tell me to go with you to your family, sect, or other places and promise me benefits, do you think I will believe you? We're already like this now. I am afraid that after entering your lair, I will really be slapped to pieces. Whatever enmity or grudge, it was better to settle it here. Exchanging the body of the blood flame divine lotus for your life, this deal seems to be a good deal for you. As Du Xiaofu spoke, he arrived beside the old man again and slammed his palm down again. This time, he had already activated the law of space and firmly bound the surroundings. Perhaps with the old man's means, he could easily escape another attack, but Du Xiaofu believed that if he continued to attack like this, the old man would become weaker and weaker until he no longer had the strength to dodge. At that time, wouldn't everything be under his control? Kid, don't be anxious. The old man hurriedly shouted, hating that he could not speak out his thoughts in one breath. Kid, this old man can't give you the blood flame divine lotus. I have already merged with it. If I give it to you, this old man will lose his life immediately. Why don't you become my disciple? As this old man's disciple, I can give you a lot of benefits. I see that your attainments in the law of space are not weak, and this old man's attainments in this aspect are countless times higher than yours. If you have me to teach you, you can improve your strength very quickly. This way, neither of us will lose out. Kid, what do you think of this idea? Hey kid, don't be anxious. I haven't finished yet. Quickly stop. Du Xiaofu didn't care about what the skeletal old man said. He went up and slapped him. After the old man used the law of space to escape, Du Xiaofu also used the Fuyao style. Like a shadow, he appeared in front of the old man in a blink of an eye and slapped that skeleton again. The old man cried out anxiously and could only hurriedly dodge again and again. He was completely unable to attack Du Xiaofu. His strength was rapidly depleting. If this continued, it would not be long before he could only die. Old man, hand over the blood flame divine lotus and apologize to me. I will consider sparing your life. Du Xiaofu shouted and chased after the old man. He did not use any tyrannical means. He just raised his palm again and slapped it down again and again. He knew that he could not hit the old man and was happy to preserve his strength. In the end, Du Xiaofu simply stood in the same place and did not move. The moment the old man appeared from the space, Du Xiaofu greeted him with a thunderbolt and slashed down. He was so shocked that he hurriedly dodged. This old man is really 8 lifetimes of bad luck. How did I meet such a pain in the ass like you? The old man's heart was filled with unspeakable bitterness and said, But I really can't give you the blood flame divine lotus. Otherwise, this old man will be dead. He could also see that Du Xiaofu did not have the intention to kill him. Otherwise, the other party would have gone all out and he would have been exhausted by now. You old thing want to kill me? Don't tell me you are so naive to think that I will care about your life and death? Du Xiaofu snorted lightly and still unhurriedly summoned thunderbolts and slashed down, forcing the old man to be in a difficult situation. However, it was at this moment that something unexpected happened. Both of them heard a loud boom, and then endless stones fell from the sky and smashed into the sea of flames. However, they were all burned into smoke in an instant and slowly dissipated. However, this movement attracted the attention of both of them at the same time. Du Xiaofu and the skeletal old man stopped at the same time and looked up in the direction of the cave entrance. "Boy, someone is coming. Let this old man hide," the skeletal old man said hurriedly. Immediately, he was no longer afraid of Du Xiaofu and flew directly to his side. "Old man, why are you hiding? Could it be your enemy?" Du Xiaofu turned his eyes and looked at him suspiciously and asked, "You goddamn brat. In this old man's current state, as long as he has some strength, he can be a threat to me. And I have the original body of the Bloodfire Divine Lotus. No matter who sees it, they won't let it go easily." The skeletal old man was anxious. He grabbed Du Xiaofu and hurriedly asked, "Boy, do you have the law of space? Let this old man go in and hide. If someone sees the original body of the Bloodfire Divine Lotus, you may not be able to get it in the end." Du Xiaofu was speechless. He had to admit that what the old man said was very reasonable. If the person who came was too strong, it was really possible that he would lose the original body of the Bloodfire Divine Lotus. And the reason why the old man sought his protection was to save his life. He did not hesitate and quickly opened a gap in the ancient desolate space and appeared in the void. What a powerful space technique. It seems to contain the law of time. What an amazing treasure. From the aura fluctuating from the ancient desolate space, the old man immediately understood the mystery of it and could not help but cry out in surprise. The law of space and the law of time, these two supreme powers fused together. Even with the skeletal old man's strength, he felt very frightened. He glanced at the purple-robed youth in front of him seriously. In an instant, countless thoughts turned in his mind. It seemed that this young man's background was not small at all. "Old thing, what are you still in a daze for? Hurry up and go in." Du Xiaofu glared fiercely at him and scolded. "Go in." The skeletal old man recovered from his daze. His figure flashed and he drilled into the ancient desolate space. Following that, an endless amount of flame energy was also brought in. Immediately after, the lava space recovered its clarity. The initial scene appeared. Everything could be observed with the naked eye. Under Du Xiaofu's feet was surging magma, emitting flames as it jumped. In the blazing magma, there were a few green lotus leaves floating, rising and falling with the rolling magma. Du Xiaofu was not anxious. He waved out a light palm, picked it up, and put it in his Chinkuan bag. "Who is it?" After Du Xiaofu put away the ancient desolate space, he looked up and could see that there were more than 10 figures at the entrance of the cave. He Jibai and 6 other people were there. In addition, there were some unfamiliar faces. At this time, the restriction barrier at the entrance of the cave had already disappeared. It was blown away by a blow. The surrounding boulders were shaken and fell one after another, smashing into the magma and splashing a large amount of sparks. The changes in the lava space also attracted the attention of the people above. "Brother, you finally appeared." Seeing Du Xiaofu appear, he Jibai said with some joy. Then he quickly descended with his followers and stood beside Du Xiaofu. "You're injured?" Du Xiaofu saw that he Jibai was holding his chest with one hand, and his breathing was a little hurried. There was also a scarlet trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. To be able to injure a young expert at the peak of the complete void returning stage, the cultivation of the person who came was definitely not ordinary. However, Du Xiaofu didn't think too much about it. He didn't have much of a relationship with He Jibai. Even though He Jibai looked too much like Chinguyu, Du Xiaofu didn't plan to get involved as long as those people didn't provoke him. "I'm fine, it's just a small injury." He Jibai smiled lightly and raised his sleeve to wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth. However, when he looked up at the brocade-robed young man, he could not help but show a look of fear in his eyes. And this scene was caught by Du Xiaofu. It was obvious that the person who injured him was the brocade-robed young man. Can the people of the Great Void Divine General's estate be lawless? You even dare to injure our young master. Do you really think you can cover the sky with one hand? Behind Hihibai, a follower looked up at the sky and roared with righteous indignation. Du Xiaofu couldn't help but be stunned when he heard this, and he raised his eyes to look over again. Could it be that the brocade-robed young man is from the Great Void Divine General's estate, which is Dai Xuanzi's family? I haven't left yet, and the other party has already come knocking on my door? Hijibai, I didn't want to attack you, but you want to protect that kid, so don't blame me for not showing mercy to the Great Void Divine General's estate. At this moment, the brocade-robed young man came down from the sky and stood in front of Hijibai and Du Xiaofu as he snorted. Such a sentence stunned Du Xiaofu again. Hijibai actually provoked the brocade-robed young man to attack him in order to protect him? He was not even close to him, so why did he do this? Brother, you must be joking. I just thought you looked kind and wanted to make another friend. Perhaps my strength is far inferior to yours, but I still want to be thick-skinned and make friends with you. Hijibai said his intention directly and did not hide it at all. Du Xiaofu was stunned, and he had a good impression of Hijibai. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, young master I can't thank you enough. But now is not the time to talk, let me solve the problem here first." He thought for a while and roughly understood what was going on. After Dai Xuanzi suffered a loss at his hands, he must have found other people from the Great Void Divine General's estate to seek revenge. But at that time, he was refining the Blood Flame Divine Lotus, and Hijibai was afraid that the other party would disturb him, so he stopped him. But the other party did not give Hijibai or the Great Void Divine General's estate any face, and directly injured Hijibai. Du Xiaofu had no intention of retreating from the trouble that came knocking on his door. Those who entered this special space were all experts of the younger generation, and most of them were not a threat to him. He had already observed that no matter how strong the brocade-robed young man was, he was only at the same level as little Xingxing, and was not a match for him. "Brat, are you the one who injured my third brother?" Seeing that Hijibai was talking to Du Xiaofu, the brocade-robed young man pointed his finger at Du Xiaofu's nose and asked arrogantly. His eyes revealed a fierce light, and his slanted eyebrows flew into his hair, adding to his heroic spirit. His black hair was casually scattered, like a willow tree, and moved without wind. "I don't know who your third brother is. But 2 days ago, I did teach a fool with a nose on his head a lesson. Speaking of which, you don't look like him, how can you be brothers? Are you not born to the same mother? Or are you not born to the same father?" Du Xiaofu touched his chin and put on a very serious look. He kept looking at the brocade-robed young man, and at the same time, he kept talking. But as soon as he said that, the brocade-robed young man's face turned purple. "Little bastard, do you want to die?" The brocade-robed young man was furious. His long hair stood up, and he looked like a furious lion. His fierce eyes were opened wide like copper bells, and it was indescribably terrifying. Du Xiaofu's words made the brocade-robed young man go crazy. The two brothers did not look alike, and it was not a big problem to say that they were not born to the same mother. But to say that they were not born to the same father, there was a lot of content involved. It could lead to a lot of stories, and it would cause people to have endless fanciful thoughts and endless aftertaste. This guy's mouth is really vicious. Beside Du Xiaofu, Hijibai's mouth twitched, and his eyes were about to pop out. Not only him, but even the few followers beside him also felt boundless respect for the purple-robed young man beside him. This guy was too awesome. He dared to ridicule the people of the Divine General's residence. Everyone knew that in the Yuqing Divine Kingdom, the purple-robed young man was an absolutely powerful existence. Even the Zihong Divine General's residence did not dare to provoke him so brazenly. It could be said that the hatred between the purple-robed young man and the Divine General's residence was getting deeper, and it would be difficult to resolve. Although Hijibai and the others could not help but worry for Du Xiaofu, they could not help but give him a thumbs up in their hearts. "Brother, this is the second young master of the Divine General's residence, Dai Xuanzi's second brother. His name is Dai Xianming. He's much stronger than Dai Xuanzi, and has truly stepped into the seizing divinity stage. You have to be careful. Seeing that the brocade-robed young man had gone crazy, He Jibai gently turned his head and transmitted his voice to Du Xiaofu. I know. Du Xiaofu replied, and then looked at the brocade-robed young man called Dai Xinming. He rolled his eyes and said, You get angry so easily? It seems that I was right. But then again, you and Dai Xuanzi are not born from the same father, but your characters are somewhat similar. You are both so stupid. Little bastard, how dare you speak without thinking? Today I will tear you into pieces. Dai Xinming shouted. His fierce eyes looked as if he could not wait to tear Du Xiaofu into pieces. He had never been insulted like this, and he had never been pointed at and scolded like this. Dai Xinming, who had grown up under the protection of many people, could not tolerate people saying that his father was a cuckold and saying that he was stupid. Boy, as long as you are alive, the Divine General's residence will hunt you down to the ends of the earth. Beside Dai Xinming, there were also people from the Divine General's residence who shouted furiously. They could not wait to pounce on the purple-robed young man and tear him into pieces, but these people knew that they were far from being a match for him. Today, he will definitely die. Dai Xinming shouted with hatred. He then took a big step forward and attacked Du Xiaofu. Chapter 27:11. Dai Xuanming's strength was not weak at all. Others might not know, but He Jibai did. It could be said that in the entire Yuqing Divine Kingdom, there were only a few people of the same generation who could defeat him. He Jibai began to worry when he saw Dai Xinming pouncing straight at Du Xiaofu. Although he had seen Du Xiaofu's strength, he did not think that he could be stronger than Dai Xinming. All of you step back. Let me deal with this arrogant bastard first. Du Xiaofu let out a cold snort. An imposing aura rose from his body as he pushed He Jibai and his subordinates out. Then, the purple gold heavenly tower appeared in his hand, swallowing and spitting out purple gold light. Opposite Du Xiaofu, Dai Xuanming's black hair danced wildly. He was like an unparalleled demon god, waving his fists in the void. Under the operation of the vast qi, they quickly converged and condensed. The fluctuation of the law of water was the same as Dai Xuanzi's. Soon, it condensed into a huge water fist. Dense runes revolved on it, explaining the true meaning of the law of water, releasing an aura that was both soft and hard. Du Xiaofu's eyes twitched. He could feel the unparalleled power on this fist. Even though it didn't look violent, it definitely contained an extremely ferocious force. I've just mastered some of the law of fire. This is the perfect time to test its power. Du Xiaofu's heart sank as he quickly made his move. In his mind, some of the patterns on the law of fire emitted a blazing light. Following that, a raging fire suddenly rose from Du Xiaofu's body, making him look like he was burning. In his hand, the purple gold heavenly tower buzzed incessantly. Under the effect of the law of fire, it turned red as if it was being calcined. It was so red that it was transparent. Go to hell, kid. Dai Xinming roared, waving his sparkling water fist, and brazenly moved. The space was trembling violently, and the entire lava space was shaking uncontrollably. Large pieces of rubble rolled down from above. Someone like you dares to say that you want me to die? On the other hand, those who provoke me don't have a good ending. Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows and said disdainfully. He swung his sword down vertically, and the void was easily sliced apart by the scorching purple gold heavenly tower like a piece of tofu. Silently, a hideous crack appeared, emitting a scorching aura. Along with it, a burnt smell spread through the space. It was in such a scene that the broadsword in Du Xiaofu's hand collided with Dai Xuanming's glowing fist in an instant. Well, it was as if a piece of red-hot iron had been thrown into clear water. It was extremely ear-piercing. After the broadsword and the water fist met, there wasn't much of a commotion. As soon as the two opposing forces came into contact, they began to devour each other, consuming each other's energy. The huge water fist emitted a scorching mist that rose densely in the air like a haze. The flames on the broadsword in Du Xiaofu's hand also rapidly weakened, and soon became dull. Just as the purple gold heavenly tower completely recovered its original appearance, Dai Xuanming's water fist had already been split into two halves. Du Xiaofu softly acknowledged. He discovered that the fist that he had split apart didn't lose any momentum. After splitting into two halves, it still continued to bombard him. Such a scene couldn't help but cause his eyes to twitch. Everything in the world contains the 5 elements, and the principles of the 5 elements reinforce and restrain each other. Water restrains fire. This is the law of nature. The water attribute law that Dai Xianming has grasped is already not weak. I'm afraid that he is not far from the true perfection realm. I have just grasped some fire attribute law, and it's not enough to fight against him. What's more, when the two met, I was the one who was naturally restrained. Du Xiaofu kept thinking in his heart, and he knew the essential reason. He didn't find it strange that he was at a disadvantage. If he used the lightning attribute law or the space attribute law, he could easily defeat Dai Xianming. While thinking in his mind, Du Xiaofu quickly responded to the two halves of the fist that were whizzing towards him. He suddenly withdrew his sword, and the purple gold heavenly tower disappeared from his palm. In the next moment, Du Xiaofu's purple robe fluttered as if it was filled with a strong wind. Tyrannical fist way! Du Xiaofu suddenly shouted, and the magnificent qi in his body circulated. Both of his fists punched out, and it was as if 2 dragons were born, roaring and shaking the sky. Amidst the vast purple gold light, Du Xiaofu's hands blasted out, and in the blink of an eye, they smashed on the 2 water fist prints. Boom! Boom! After the first hit, 2 terrifying tremors sounded in the void at the same time. Terrifying qi waves rushed in all directions, and the force swept out, sending the onlookers flying one by one. In the earth-shaking loud noise, the 2 water fist prints shattered and exploded into countless water droplets. They were like tiny flying stones that sputtered and carried a terrifying force. They pierced through the void, and tiny, densely packed holes appeared. It was terrifying. He Jibai and the others immediately unleashed their profound qi to protect their bodies. Otherwise, those who were slightly weaker would have been shot into a ferocious hornet's nest under such a terrifying scene. You dare to clamor with the great void divine general's residence with this little trick? You really don't know how to write the word death. Dai Xianming snorted coldly and looked at Du Xiaofu as he spoke. Just now, he had only used a probing attack and did not use all his strength. However, seeing that the purple-robed youth opposite him did not seem to have an easy time dealing with it, he felt that his strength was only so. Perhaps compared to his third brother, Dai Xuanzi, and He Jibai, the purple-robed youth was indeed much stronger. However, if that was all he had, he would definitely die in front of him. Most importantly, the purple-robed youth had mastered the law of fire, which was naturally countered by him. After a few exchanges, it was not too difficult to kill the purple-robed youth. What answered Dai Xianming was Du Xiaofu's chuckle. His purple robe fluttered slightly, and he took half a step back to stabilize his body. Perhaps it was this retreat that made the purple-robed youth think that his strength was far inferior to his. Sure enough, Dai Xianming was the same as his third brother, Dai Xuanzi. They were both arrogant and conceited. Du Xiaofu didn't care. He didn't plan on displaying his full strength to begin with. Within the 33 heavens, there would be many opponents. If he were to expose all of his secrets too early, it wouldn't be a good thing. Kill! Dai Xianming shouted again, and his roar shattered the void, causing the lava space to tremble violently. On the surrounding cliffs that were scorched red, countless huge rocks peeled off and rustled down. The space seemed to be grasped by an invisible hand, shaking with all its strength. It was as if a terrible earthquake was coming, and the sky was collapsing. Swoosh! In Dai Xuanming's palm, the power of the water attribute crazily condensed, and bubbles surged and bubbled. In the blink of an eye, a huge light sword was condensed. It was more than 10 feet long, and was much larger than Du Xiaofu's purple gold heavenly tower. Strange lines glowed and flowed on the blade of the sword, and a domineering aura fluctuated, causing the entire light sword condensed from the power of the water attribute to look like the sharpest weapon in the world. The cold light was frightening. This huge light sword was held in Dai Xuanming's hand, and it began to slowly dance. Rumble. In the void, there seemed to be thunder rolling, and the terrifying sound reverberated. The space was distorted, and the lava under everyone's feet surged, like the tide of the sea, straight to the sky. Thick pillars of fire rose into the sky, and the terrifying flames burned everything in the sky. He Jibai and the others, as well as the people from the Great Void Divine General's residence who followed Dai Xianming, all rushed out of the cave at the first moment and did not dare to stay in this space. Once the purple-robed young man and Dai Xianming fought again, no one knew what kind of terrifying scene it would create. So what if you're a disciple of the Great Void Divine General's residence? Since you've provoked me, then let me teach you how to behave. Du Xiaofu shouted, and golden light covered his body, and the Dapeng golden wings flapped violently behind him. His body moved slightly, and in an instant he disappeared from his original spot, and there was no trace of him. At the same time, the purple-robed figure appeared beside Dai Xianming, and a punch came crashing down. The law of space. This scene made Dai Xuanming's eyes widen, and he felt a little shocked. He did not expect that the purple-robed young man could use the law of space in addition to comprehending and mastering the law of fire. Moreover, from the way he appeared and disappeared unpredictably, the law of space was quite mysterious. This made Dai Xianming feel a little regretful. He had underestimated his opponent, and in an instant his opponent had gotten close to him. Way of the overbearing fist. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's roar rang in his ears again. This loud roar was like a heavy drum, and it shook his eardrums until they were buzzing. Then, a fist that was emitting a blazing golden light, carrying a ferocious force, smashed on his chest. Puff! Dai Xianming was sent flying, and his chest caved in directly. An arrow of blood spurted out from his mouth, and it pierced through the void, forming a black hole. The figure in the brocade robe was sent flying like a kite with a broken string, and he crashed heavily into the cliff in the distance. As the stone shook, a human-shaped hole appeared, and it was dozens of feet deep. Puff! Inside the hole, Dai Xianming spat out another mouthful of blood. At this moment, he felt as if his bones and internal organs had all burst open, as if they were about to shatter. A deep pain invaded his body and went straight to his brain. The law of space of the Golden Winged Rock Clan. What is your relationship with that clan? Dai Xuanming's eyes revealed a look of fear. He rushed out of the cave and stared at Du Xiaofu as he asked. He was indescribably shocked. He had just condensed a new attack, but he was instantly sent flying by his opponent. During this process, he did not even have time to wave the light sword in his hand to meet the attack. By the time he discovered that the purple-robed young man had appeared, it was already too late. The other party's methods, coupled with the golden wings behind him, allowed Dai Xianming to quickly guess the origin of this technique. Everyone in the 33 heavens knew about the Golden Winged Rock Clan. It was an extremely powerful clan, and one of the top clans in the 33 heavens. Not to mention the Great Void Divine General's residence, even the Divine Emperor of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom would not dare to provoke that clan. At this moment, seeing the purple-robed young man's methods, countless thoughts flashed through Dai Xuanming's mind. If he had a deep relationship with the Golden Winged Rock Clan, he would have to carefully consider whether offending him was an unwise move. He stared seriously at the purple-robed young man opposite him, hoping to get an answer from him. However, to his disappointment, Du Xiaofu only responded with 4 words, "It's none of your business." Such an answer made Dai Xuanming's face turn purple again. Could. I don't care where you come from, or what your relationship with the Golden Winged Rock Clan is, but as long as you're in the territory of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom, you won't be able to behave atrociously. Dai Xianming said the word, "good," 3 times in a row, and stared fiercely at Du Xiaofu without moving an inch. Although he was a little wary of the Golden Winged Rock Clan, after all, the purple-robed young man was not a real Golden Winged Rock. Even if he killed him, he would not really offend that terrifying clan. Speaking of which, the Great Void belonged to the Yuqing Divine Kingdom, and it was not a place for an outsider to behave atrociously. You've said so many harsh words, but you don't have the strength to back them up. Don't you think you're digging your own grave? Du Xiaofu looked coldly at Dai Xianming, and with a flash of his body he suddenly disappeared. The Fuyao form was activated again, and under the effect of the mysterious space order, he instantly appeared next to Dai Xianming. However, this time, the other party did not dare to be careless. Before Du Xiaofu made his move, he had already set up layers of protection around his body. Waves of water-based energy waves, like bubbles, and also like glowing armor, wrapped around the body of the young man in the brocade robe and stuck tightly to his body, forming the tightest defense. At the same time, Dai Xuanming's primordial spirit was fully activated, and he was constantly spying on Du Xiaofu's position. The moment he appeared, he waved the light sword in his hand violently and slashed to the side. However, he was still half a beat too slow, and Du Xiaofu had already taken control of the situation, and he had already made the most ferocious attack. "Clown, how dare you be so arrogant?" Du Xiaofu snorted coldly, and unknowingly, the purple gold heavenly tower was in his hand again, and he shouted loudly, "Emptiness between heaven and earth." Lines of mysterious runes flashed and shone, and they gathered to form a vast sword radiance, which emitted an aura of destruction and slashed down fiercely. After such a sword radiance appeared, everything in the void was suppressed, and it was as if there was only this incomparably domineering sword radiance left in the world. Du Xiaofu himself was set off by the brilliant sword radiance, and he looked like a deity in the world, and his majesty was unbearable. Qi La, the void was cut open like a piece of paper, and a long and narrow crack appeared, extending all the way to Dai Xuanming's side. The vast and peerless sword radiance swept through the crack in the void, and in the next moment, it slashed on the light sword of the young man in the brocade robe. The light sword formed by the water-based laws was cut in half at once, and it was like a piece of rotten wood, unable to withstand a single blow. However, the sword radiance in Du Xiaofu's hand did not diminish, and it directly hit Dai Xuanming's shoulder. Buzz buzz. The defensive armor on Dai Xuanming's body, under this sword radiance, made a teeth-numbing sound, and it was crying out with difficulty. Qi La. In the end, the sword radiance burst out with unparalleled power, and the water-based armor was broken, and it slashed on Dai Xuanming's body fiercely. Poof! Blood splattered, and the sword radiance directly cut open his shoulder blade, and it only stopped halfway in, and was neutralized by the power in his body. Ah! Dai Xianming let out a miserable howl, and he was in extreme pain. However, he gritted his teeth and immediately turned around to fly backwards, wanting to get as far away from Du Xiaofu as possible. However, this time, Du Xiaofu did not continue to chase after him, but slowly raised a palm and pointed it at Dai Xianming from afar. Then he stretched out his 5 fingers and suddenly clenched them in the void. Suddenly, there was an extremely terrifying compression force around Dai Xianming, and the space was like a piece of paper, which was instantly crushed into a ball by a huge force, and terrible wrinkles appeared. Along with it, the body of the young man in the brocade robe was also fiercely crushed into a ball, and it twisted strangely. When Du Xiaofu let go of his hand, Dai Xianming was like a weak and boneless worm, losing all support and falling from the void. This move was the God-binding grasp that Du Xiaofu had comprehended on his own, and it was a way to use the law of space. Back in Shenwu world, quite a few people had suffered from this technique. However, because Du Xiaofu's comprehension of the law of space was far from perfect, the power of this move was still a little weak compared to the law of thunder and lightning. However, as he reached the perfection of the God-seizing realm, and was only one step away from the true severing realm, the effect of the God-binding grasp was many times stronger than before. Perhaps it was not enough to use against experts who were more powerful than him, but it was easy to use against Dai Xianming at this time. Dai Xianming was not prepared, and in an instant, Dai Xianming was severely injured. I've said it before, those who provoke me will not have a good ending, and you will not be an exception. Just because you have some strength and the huge force behind you, you think you are superior to everyone, and you think that even God is inferior to you. I don't know how many rich second generations like you I have killed in my decades of cultivation. Chapter 27:12. Seeing that Dai Xianming was about to fall into the lava under his feet, Du Xiaofu did not move. He just waved a huge palm of light and grabbed the body of the young man in the brocade robe and brought him back to his side. Du Xiaofu's hand tightened around Dai Xuanming's neck so that he could not move at all. In fact, although Dai Xianming was severely injured, he could still recover some of his strength if he was given some time. After all, he was a true God-seizing expert and his main fighting method was the power of law. As long as he could recover, he would be able to fight again in no time. Of course, Du Xiaofu would not give him this opportunity. He had only been in the 33 heavens for a short time and there were still many things that he did not understand. In addition, there were many benefits in this strange space. He did not want to stay here for long. It was better to get rid of the trouble here as soon as possible. What are you trying to do? Being grabbed by Du Xiaofu's hand, Dai Xianming panicked and shouted in fear. At this moment, he finally realized how wrong he was. The purple-robed young man's cultivation was too strong. He was many times stronger than him. Perhaps there were not many people in the Yuqing Divine Kingdom who could be his match. Dai Xuanming's fear was like the rising tide of the sea. It quickly spread to his heart and made him feel incomparably terrified. An expert would not have too many misgivings when facing an opponent. Perhaps the purple-robed young man came from a powerful force. He did not dare to think about the golden-winged great rocks, but it was very likely that he came from one of the holy lands of the supreme Changrong heaven. Even the prince of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom could not afford to offend such a force, let alone the great void divine general's estate. It was obvious that the purple-robed young man would not let him go so easily. Dai Xuanming's body began to tremble. Weren't you jumping around happily just now? Haven't you been clamoring to tear me to shreds? Your people from the great void general's residence are so arrogant. It's fine if you don't have the corresponding strength, but now you've even lost your courage. Du Xiaofu pursed his lips and narrowed his eyes. He lifted Dai Xuanzi up and flew out of the lava space. In the blink of an eye, he was out of the cave. The treasures in this space had already been obtained by him, so there was no need to keep them. Look, they're out. As soon as Du Xiaofu appeared, someone outside immediately shouted. He looked around and found that there were at least 200 to 300 people gathered in the valley. Needless to say, some of these people must have discovered the abnormality in this area one after another, and some of them must have followed Dai Xianming here to watch his battle. However, the moment Du Xiaofu appeared, the scene instantly became silent. Everyone held their breaths and didn't make a sound for a long time. However, after a short period of dead silence, the crowd suddenly exploded. It can't be! Dai Xianming was defeated and captured by the purple-robed young man. How is this possible? The second young master of the Great Void General's residence is in the Seizing God realm. There aren't many opponents in the entire Yuqing Holy Kingdom who can match him. It's hard to imagine. Where did this kid come from? How did such an expert suddenly appear? It seems like no one knows him. Is there such a person in the Yuqing Holy Kingdom? That's not the point. There are people in the younger generation who can defeat Dai Xianming in the Yuqing Holy Kingdom, but it's hard to find someone who can make him so embarrassed and capture him directly. This time, the people from the Great Void General's residence are really in trouble. There must be a powerful force behind that person. His background can't be simple. Otherwise, how could he cultivate such a terrifying young expert? That's right. He can easily defeat Dai Xianming. Even in the Holy Lands, such an expert shouldn't be considered weak, right? Many people cried out in surprise and began to discuss loudly. Many people might not have seen the 3 young masters of the Great Void General's residence, but their strength was well known in the entire Yuqing Holy Kingdom. They were definitely outstanding figures of the younger generation, especially the first young master and second young master of their family. Their strength had already entered the Seizing God realm and they were extremely terrifying. At that moment, Dai Xianming had been defeated just like that. Furthermore, he had been defeated in a rather miserable manner. It was an indescribable sorry state. This guy who suddenly appeared could be a peerless talent who has been hidden by some force for many years. He was only released to gain experience when the Great Void opened this time. I dare say that this will be even more exciting later on. I can't help but look forward to it. The famous young talents in the Yuqing Holy Kingdom have finally met their match. I really don't know. If the first young master of the Great Void General's residence and the others were to fight with this guy, who would win in the end? I'm afraid that he won't be weaker than the others. Although they are the most powerful guys in the Holy Kingdom, the purple-robed young man's strength doesn't seem to be weaker than any of them. If they were to fight directly, no one can tell the result. Let's not make wild guesses here. After all, that kind of realm is not something that we can understand now. We can only determine their strength after a real fight. I'm really looking forward to it. I really want to see the battle between the first young master of the Dai family and the purple-robed young man. According to my estimation, the first young master of the Great Void General's residence might be slightly stronger. For such an expert, he must have some extraordinary means. It's hard to estimate his strongest strength. Many people were discussing and all of them were talking about Du Xiaofu and his strength. Everyone was extremely curious about this young expert who had appeared out of nowhere. They wanted to know where he came from and how he compared to the few people from the Yuqing Divine Kingdom. They wanted to know who was stronger and who was weaker. However, there were also many people who did not think highly of Du Xiaofu. The first young master of the Dai family from the Great Void General's residence had a long reputation. The young man who had suddenly appeared was indeed very strong, but he might not be a match for the first young master. Brother. Just as the crowd was discussing, He Zibai could not help but feel shocked. At the same time, he was extremely happy. He wanted to make friends with Du Xiaofu. At this moment, the strength that he had displayed was more valiant than he had expected. He could not help but admire his own judgment. It was definitely not a bad thing to make friends with such an expert. The only thing that he had to worry about was the possibility of making enemies with the Great Void General's residence. However, He Zibai did not care too much about this. The relationship between the Zihong Divine General's residence and the Great Void General's residence was originally mediocre. Even if he offended them, it would not be a big deal. Moreover, with the strength of the Zihong Divine General's residence, there was no need to be too afraid of them. He Zibai cried out in surprise. He stepped out and went to Du Xiaofu's side. However, before he could do anything, the purple-robed young man lifted Dai Xianming up as if he was carrying a dead dog. He lifted Dai Xianming up and said, "In the world that I came from, many people called me Demon King. I will never be merciful to those who offend me. I am not afraid of the legalism, the school of famous scholars, and the school of vertical and horizontal movements of the 100 schools of thought. I believe that the strength of the Great Void General's residence should not be stronger than them. You have done something wrong, so you have to pay the corresponding price. Now it's time." As he spoke, a strong qi gushed out from Du Xiaofu's palm and entered Dai Xuanming's body. With such a method, Dai Xuanming's body produced an explosive sound like beans being fried, and the crackling sound was endless. At the same time, his body twitched and there was a series of muffled groans. Scarlet blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. In the end, Dai Xianming screamed in pain. He only felt that every inch of his body had lost its strength. It was 10,000 times weaker and 10,000 times more painful than when he had endured Du Xiaofu's God-binding grip. His eyes quickly dimmed and his body seemed to be leaking air. A vast airflow rushed out and sizzled. All the strength in his body was flowing out uncontrollably. The surrounding space was changing shape under the impact of the airflow and was pierced through time and time again. Dai Xianming knew what had happened. In an instant, he felt as if he had suffered the cruelest punishment in the world. His heart was dead. Oh no, this is bad. What a ruthless guy. He actually dared to destroy the second young master of the Great Void General's residence. This is bad. Where the hell did this person come from? He's too bold. Something big has happened. Something big has happened. The second young master of the Great Void General's residence was destroyed. This is going to break the sky. In the eyes of the crowd, Dai Xuanming's aura weakened rapidly and he quickly became ordinary. Everyone could feel that the purple-robed young man had destroyed his cultivation and made him an ordinary person. Or rather, a useless person. Such a method caused everyone present to panic and shout incessantly, "Stop it, young man! Let go of the second young master!" Among them, the people from the Great Void General's residence who came with Dai Xianming were horrified. They all roared and rushed out. They wanted to take Dai Xianming back from Du Xiaofu. Pumph! Du Xiaofu snorted and ignored those people. He threw Dai Xuanming's body out and flew towards those people. Sizzle sizzle. Dai Xuanming's subordinates quickly displayed their cultivation and laid down a gentle dark qi to support Dai Xuanming's body. However, Du Xiaofu's strength was too great. In order not to hurt their master, these people were forced to retreat far away before they could stabilize themselves. Previously, I had already let Dai Xuanzi go. However, you did not know how to restrain yourself. Today, I destroyed your cultivation to teach you a lesson. At the same time, I want the rest of the people from the Great Void General's residence to know not to provoke me in the future. Otherwise, I will not be merciful next time. In the midst of the crowd's panic, Du Xiaofu's voice sounded again. His words carried a bit of sternness and incomparable firmness, making no one doubt the authenticity of his words. Du Xiaofu knew the consequences of destroying Dai Xuanming's cultivation. He was standing on the opposite side of the Great Void General's residence. However, he did not panic at all. It was as if he did not care. Furthermore, there was a reason why he did all this in front of so many people. He had just arrived at the 33 heavens and did not know much about everything here. Moreover, there were countless experts here. If he did not use his fierce and ruthless means to establish his authority here, not to mention the entire 33 heavens, even in this strange space, there would be many people who would provoke him. This time, after destroying Dai Xianming, at least he could ensure that he would not be disturbed in this space. He urgently needed time to improve his strength. Little Xingxing, the tomboy, Du Xiaoyao, and Du Xiaobao were nowhere to be found. Du Xiaofu was not at ease and needed to find them as soon as possible. "Boy, the Great Void General's residence will not let you off. Little bastard, how dare you hurt my second young master? Just wait to be beheaded. When the Divine General knows, he will definitely turn you into ashes." After Dai Xuanming's entourage caught him, they all looked at Du Xiaofu with hatred in their eyes and cursed him incessantly. Their master was destroyed in front of them. This was not a slap in the face, but a death sentence. As subordinates, after Dai Xianming was destroyed, the Great Void General's residence would not let them off. "Unappreciative things, if you don't get lost, I don't mind killing all of you here." Du Xiaofu narrowed his eyes and glanced at those people. Seeing such a look, the group of people from the Great Void General's residence felt a chill run down their spines. There was no need to think too much. Everyone immediately turned around and left, taking Dai Xianming with them. They did not dare to stay any longer. This purple-robed youth dared to attack their master. If he wanted to deal with them, he would not be soft-hearted. "Let's go. Let's go too. If the people from the Great Void General's residence know about this and get angry with us, we will be in trouble. This purple-robed youth is really a devil. He is really a demon king. This method is too cruel. It's better to stay away from him, lest we get into trouble." Many experts were shouting and running away. They were afraid that if they stood too close to Du Xiaofu, they would be caught in the crossfire. Just as he had said, this person was truly worthy of the title of Demon King. He was simply too ferocious. In fact, if they thought about it carefully, they would not be so emotional. For cultivators, killing or being killed was completely normal. They would not be able to get the title of Demon King just because they destroyed someone's cultivation. Because the person Du Xiaofu destroyed today was the second son of the Great Void General's residence. It was precisely because of this that everyone felt a huge disparity. The originally high and mighty expert was being dealt with in such a manner. Such a method was indeed tyrannical enough. "Let's go, let's go." As someone took the lead to leave, the crowd rushed out like a swarm of bees. The valley quickly became deserted. Only Du Xiaofu, He Jibai, and a dozen of his subordinates were left. At this time, He Jibai was still in a daze. It was obvious that he had not recovered from the huge shock. The subordinates beside him were not much better. They all looked at Du Xiaofu with a strong sense of horror. Under their gazes, when they saw the purple-robed young man walking towards them, all of them took half a step back in unison, as if they were a little afraid. "Brother, you are in big trouble." He Jibai calmed his thoughts and said with a bitter smile. Everyone in the Yuqing Holy Kingdom knew how high the status of the great Void General's residence was. Not to mention that no one in the Holy Kingdom dared to provoke them, even the Emperor God had to give them face. If Du Xiaofu had simply become enemies with Dai Xuanzi and Dai Ming, it would not have been a big deal. But this time, he had directly crippled their second young master. This enmity was too deep. Not to mention the first young master of the Dai family, even the experts of the older generation of the Divine General's residence of the Great Void Divine General would take action. When that happened, the purple-robed youth would be in a very bad situation. "It's okay. I am used to this situation." In response, Du Xiaofu only smiled and gave He Jibai a reassuring look, telling him not to worry. Since he had embarked on the path of cultivation, he had lost count of how many times similar things had happened. The great enemies in the divine martial world, the Great Lun sect, the dragons, legalism, the famous scholars, the school of vertical and horizontal martial arts, were all godlike existences to him. However, in the end, they were all stepped on by him. Therefore, he did not take the matter of the Great Void General's residence to heart. Only with a strong opponent would he be able to undergo better training. "I am Du Xiaofu. Thank you for your protection." Du Xiaofu did not explain much to He Jibai. He only stepped forward and clasped his fists solemnly. He slowly developed a good impression of this gentle young man. This person looked very similar to Qingguyu. Both of them were so handsome and elegant. Most importantly, he was not pretentious. He did not hide anything and did not act like a girl. This was also very similar to Qingguyu. Du Xiaofu also wanted to get to know such a person. Moreover, he urgently needed to understand the situation in the 33 heavens and his current situation. From He Jibai, he would be able to quickly understand many things that he wanted to know. "I am He Jibai. Greetings, Brother Du." He Jibai saw that Du Xiaofu did not seem to care at all. He shook off his earlier worries and bowed to Du Xiaofu seriously. "I came from the outside world and accidentally entered here. There are many things that I would like to ask Brother He. Please enlighten me." Du Xiaofu bowed again and said seriously, "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."